This is the Midnight on Earth podcast with your host, Jake Weaver. Engineered by Cedric Swan. Hey everybody, we're back with another episode of Midnight on Earth. I'm your host, Jake Weaver, and we're here to bring you more knowledge, more light, and more love. We have an incredible guest today, one of my personal heroes, the legendary Jim Shooter. I can't believe he's here, but we're going to get to him in just a second. But first, I need you to do something for me. Follow me on Instagram at midnight_on_earth. That is the address. If you go there, please follow us. That helps get the word out. All this positive information, all these great stories, it gets out to more people, spreads and spreads and spreads, and we're raising the vibration of humanity. Spotify, follow us there. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts, please click the button that connects you with me forever. And the most important thing, of course, is tell a friend. Tell a friend that you know that loves these type of podcasts, that loves these conversations. You know them well. You're their friends. Tell them about Midnight on Earth. Bring them here, midnightonearth.com. All right. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we have one of my personal heroes, one of the greatest comic book writers and comic book personalities of all time. Some people would say legend, but I would say even more so architect, cornerstone, force, even a fundamental part of American comic books, much like Will Eisner, Jack Kirby, and Stan Lee. So let me read his bio really quick and we will get into our interview. Jim Shooter is an American writer, editor, and publisher for various comic books. He started professionally in the medium at the age of 14 at what is now DC Comics, and he is most notable for his legendary 1978 to 1987 run as Marvel Comics' ninth editor-in-chief and his work as editor-in-chief and creator of Valiant Comics. He was also both the creator and editor-in-chief of Defiant Comics and Broadway Comics. During his tenure at Marvel, the company enjoyed some of its best successes. He believed that every title, no matter how unpopular it was, deserved a chance to succeed. He abandoned the longtime Marvel Comics policy that allocated the best writers to the best-selling titles. This allowed some of the second-string titles, such as the Uncanny X-Men and Daredevil, to reach then unprecedented heights of popularity. Also, he worked to secure creators' rights, return artwork to their creators, and other industry innovations. After leaving Marvel, he fronted an effort to purchase the publisher from its corporate ownership, losing out at the last minute to a slightly higher bid. He then founded a new company, Voyager Communications, which published comics under the Valiant Comics banner. And Valiant entered the superhero market with a relaunch of the Gold Key Comics character Magnus Robot Fighter, and also brought Solar and Turok to the fold. And Shooter brought many of Marvel's creators to Valiant, including people like Steve Ditko and Barry Windsor Smith, and also industry veterans such as Art Nichols, John Dixon, and Don Perlin. Jim also founded Defiant Comics in 1993, Broadway Comics in 1995, with many other positions, gigs, and comics written between then and today. Jim, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. My pleasure.
We have so much to talk about. You're such an incredible force and power in the comic books industry because you were there so early on. And like we said in your bio, you got your first gig at the age of 14. Really, it was 13 that you were sending in scripts. Is that correct?
Yeah, the first scripts that I wrote and they got published, I wrote when I was 13. And then they actually, the first check arrived when I was 14. So I don't know how you figure it, but anyway, Roy says I was 13. So,
okay,
Roy Thomas is the greatest historian, so I believe him.
Yes, I think that's pretty impressive to be 13 and working in comics professionally. When I was 13, I was actually purchasing the comics that you were creating professionally. And they were amazing and they were life-changing for me. But what was it like being 13, being around the energy of these hardcore original comic creators?
Well, I'll tell you what, I really had a who's who of people. I mean, my first published story was drawn by Shelley Moldoff, who was one of the original Batman artists. He was, way back, he's the Golden Age. After that, I was working with great people, the legends, Hall of Fame grandmasters like Kurt Swan, Gil Kane, Wally Wood, great inkers, Jack Abel, George Klein, Al Plastino. The list goes on. And then more of them, when I got to Marvel, I worked with, Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Steve Ditko. When I say work with them, I mean I worked with them. I was on the phone with Jack Kirby almost 5 hours a week for 2.5 years, and so I got to know the people. Steve Ditko, I brought him back to Marvel, and then he later worked for me at the other companies. I had Don Perlin, who was a great guy, and then like you named some of the other guys, like some of the real old guys. And I got to know Will Eisner, and I knew more guys. I met Terry Robinson. I knew Joe Simon. Went to lunch with him sometimes.
I'm sure you knew everybody being at that time. Being in the 70s.
Yeah, well, I was the youngest 60s. Kid. The thing is, they were all like, 40, 50, and I was 13. So I had lots of time to meet everybody.
But did it seem like they were superheroes themselves?
Every one of them was amazing in his own way. I mean, everybody knows about Jack. I mean, just like just a fountain of ideas, and one of the most creative people ever. Forget comics ever. And and then Stan, I don't know why, but people keep trying to make out tear him down, like, oh well, he wasn't that important. Yes, he was. I worked with him. I worked with Jack. I worked with Steve. Trust me, he was the guiding light. But nobody needs to pad Steve Ditko's resume. Nobody needs to pad Jack Kirby's resume.
Right.
So don't take anything away from Stan. But and I learned a lot from all those people. I listened to every word they said, and it was like being surrounded by gurus.
Yeah, I'm sure it really felt that way because it was so intense, and they were really. A lot of the guys that you named, like you said, the Golden Agers, they were the ones that really created the American comic book field that kind of mutated out of the newspaper strips and things like that.
Yeah, they did. They created it. It was all new. I mean, they were inventing it on the fly, and I hope people appreciate that.
I think they do.
Sometimes they'll look at a book and they'll say, "Oh, it's old-fashioned" or something. Yeah, it was revolutionary when it came out, but time passes, and it's like Stan stuff. I mean, when I started reading Marvel comics back in the early '61, I had Spider-Man laundering his costume. I never saw that. Everything was new. It was all different. And now, every character, they have colds. They have to pay the rent. He made that standard. And now everybody does it. And
he brought a dimension of realism to the comic book field that wasn't necessarily there before. It was very abstract. If you think of DC Comics and, there were places that weren't real, like Metropolis and Gotham City. And yet here was Marvel that had real cities, essentially the world outside your window. Yeah.
But then the thing is, that when Stan did that stuff, like I said, it was revolutionary because you think about what the other companies were doing. I mean, Superman is cutting the ribbon at bridge openings, and Superman is. I went to a meeting one time when I was still in high school, and I was up at the DC's offices, and apparently there were several meetings like this. I happened to be around for one of them. And it wasn't a big one. It was small. It was a few people sitting around a table, and there's Marvel Comics all over the table, and they're trying to figure out why Marvel was kicking their ass, And they had all kinds of theories. One guy thought at one time this didn't all come out at the same meeting, but one guy at one time thought, well, Marvel uses more garish coloring. And so they had Mort Weisinger and other editors were actually running color in the panel gutters to try to make it more garish looking, and then somebody came up with the idea, well, hey, this Steranko guy seems to be doing all these funny shaped panels and stuff. So they tried to force Kurt Swan to do slanty panels and stuff. And none of that, I could have told him, that's not it. That is not it. It's Stan always used to say, heroes with problems, because Stan learned to speak in sound bites. He got interviewed so many million times, and so he just had his little collection of sound bites that people liked. And I corrected him once, I said, no, Stan, it's heroes with lives, he knew. I mean, he knew what he was doing, and it was really, remarkable that he could do that and everything. And so when you read the interviews, like I say, it's sort of, interviews speak sometimes. But Stan he was a genius. I mean, he did some amazing things. Meanwhile, at DC Comics, it's like at that same meeting I was telling you about, they were holding up comics, Marvel Comics, and one guy says, he says, I think it was Haney, I'm not sure, but he said, look at this. He says, they got 2 pages of Spider-Man talking to his aunt. He says, the kid's going to be bored out of their minds. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, we're not, and another guy was showing a full page shot of the Angel flying and talking about how the glory of flying, right? And he says, this is stupid. He says, Superman flies all the time, and what's the big deal? And I said, exactly. If he doesn't think it's a big deal, why should we?
It didn't seem like they really understood that extra dimension of emotion.
No. And being the kid in the room, I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to get in trouble.
Well,
no, I'm a teenager. I'm like 15 or something at that point, and I'm not going to weigh in. These are big shots at DC, but they were wrong-headed. And I was doing a Legion of Superheroes book, Adventure Comics featuring Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. And I tried to do a pale imitation of Stan. I mean, in those days, I thought, well, I got the only book set in the future. I'm not bothering anybody, so I own the future. So I started trying to do continuity and trying to do a little more character like Stan did. Sort of like I said, very pale imitation.
Right,
but,
deeper characterization.
Yeah, well, but anyway, the thing is, at that time in the 60s, all DC titles, all the sales were falling, and Marvel was taking off. And that's why they had these meetings. They couldn't figure it out. And my book, Adventure, being a pale imitation of Stan, the first issue of mine was published at one of those postal statements of ownership that told you what the circulation was, right? They had to publish this once a year to keep their second-class mailing privileges. So in my first book, it said that the Legion of Superheroes was selling 500,000 copies a month.
Wow.
Right? In the last issue I did, when all of the DC titles were falling, they had a postal statement of ownership, and it said it was selling 500,000 a month.
Still at the last issue.
So the kid held his own.
Yeah.
When everyone else was plunging, and the thing is, those days sales were a lot better. I mean, everybody.
Oh yeah,
comics were everywhere.
Things have definitely changed. It seems like today a successful comics print run is around 10,000.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sad.
It's so sad. Very sad.
I think when I was at Marvel, I think our average was 300,000 an issue for all the books.
Yeah, which would be considered an astronomical success these days.
Yeah, and then to us it was, to everyone there it was nothing, except the DC people were jealous.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So you moved on from DC and you became editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics at 27 years old. Is that right?
I think so. Right.
And that's very young, I feel like.
1978.
Yeah, so it's very young to be spearheading a major publisher like that. What was that like for you at such a young age?
Well, I don't know if you've read my blog. I talk about some what went on back then. But basically, I'd been the associate editor for 2 years. I started in January '76, and then January '78, I became the editor-in-chief. And during those 2 years when I was associate editor, Marvel had really fallen into disrepair. I mean, Stan hadn't been involved with the comics for years, and the kind of nobody was running the ship. The editors-in-chief before me, meaning no disrespect, but they were not business people, and they didn't have any training like that, and they were sort of head writers, is what they were. Okay. You know, I mean, Roy Thomas is one of the smartest people to ever meet, and he could do anything, you know. But when he was there, he didn't have the freedom. There was still other people above him limiting him, right? But then after that, Lennon, Marv, and by the way, I'm number 6, depending on whether or not you count Stan. If you count Stan, I'm number 7. He never called himself editor-in-chief.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, so you had Len and Marv, and then Jerry for about 3 weeks, and then Archie, and then me. Now, Archie, also one of the smartest human beings you have ever met. But Archie was one of those guys. All these guys were creative guys. And Archie especially, if he had to talk to an accountant or a lawyer, his eyes glaze over. I mean, he just hated all the bureaucracy and the crap, you know. And I think, Len and Marv were happy to let Saul Brodsky or anybody else take care of all that stuff. They wanted to, you know, play with the books. Okay, so when I was at DC, one good thing that happened there was this guy, Mort Weisinger. I guess he thought I had potential to, you know, do what he did, which is, you know, they didn't call him editor-in-chief either. He was the head editor. He was the vice president. He ran the editorial. And he actually, I think, I didn't know it at the time. Why is he telling me all this stuff? But he was training me to kind of do what he did, you know? And the way I know that is that his assistant was E. Nelson Bridwell. Years later, Nelson told me that. He said, oh, yeah, he was training you to have a job like his. I said, what? Oh, okay. So anyway, when I arrived at Marvel, I could read financials. I could speak to the printer and use the right words. I could, you know, talk to the production department and use the right words, because I mean, he trained me. I not only about writing and drawing and all that stuff, but production, printing production, distribution, licensing, marketing, the whole business of the business, you know. So I walked in there a little more prepared than most of the other guys, by circuitous paths, but you know, and so you know, I set out to, you know, we were dying. It was dying, man. It was in bad shape. DC was worse. You know, the other comics companies were, Warren died, Charlton died, Harvey stopped publishing, Archie went all reprint. I don't know who else, but and then DC, on one day, DC canceled 40% of their books.
Oh my God!
You know, yeah, they call it the implosion, DC implosion.
And what do you think the root of that was? Was it just like poor creative output from the companies, or just general disinterest?
Well, I think that it was a combination of ingredients, and one of the things was that there was no one manning the helm. I mean, like I said, the previous editor-in-chief, several of them just kind of tried to be head writers, lead by example kind of thing. And they'd grown too fast because of the success Stan built. And so all of a sudden you've got all these guys whose chief qualification is that they read 1,000 comics, and they're either editors or they're writers, or, you know, what? And so and also, like I said, DC had completely lost its way. I don't think they ever really got it right. But and Marvel, it had, like I said, fallen into disrepair. There was a lot of corruption and some, you know, people double vouchering, and so one guy was embezzling, and you know.
Ooh.
So I mean, it was in bad shape, and also the books, almost all the books, all the companies, the books were late. They were all late. We had books that hadn't left house to go to the printer when I came in that first day, January 1978.
And they were done, ready to go.
They just got them finished, and they're just ready to go to the printer, and they should have been on sale 4 months earlier.
Oh my gosh!
You follow me here?
Yeah, that was really bad.
Yeah, no, it was terrible. And the thing is, like, people just wouldn't show up. They wouldn't deliver the work. It just straggled in. The production manager, John Verporten, who was trying to, run things, although he didn't really have the authority. He couldn't get people to deliver on time. That's why there were so many fill-ins and unscheduled reprints. Oh, the dreaded deadline doom and all that stuff. In January of 1978, my first month, we were supposed to publish 45 color comics. We published 26.
Oh.
Okay, so chaos, madness, crime and corruption. It was a nightmare. And then on top of that, the day I take office, I get a call from the company lawyer, brilliant lady, but she didn't know. She calls up the editor, and she says, what have you done about the copyright law of 1976? I said, lady, I've been here 15 minutes. and she said, oh, well, we need to talk. Well, apparently they changed the copyright law in 1976. They gave everybody 2 years to get ready for it. And no one at Marvel had done anything. Nothing. And so DC was more buttoned up that way. They were more buttoned up legally. They had prepared vouchers and stuff that had work for hire documents attached. They were all legally solid. Marvel, nothing, And so, we're trying to get people to sign retroactive work for hire documents so that they don't own the Spider-Man story they just did. And stuff like that. And, they work for hire. I'm sorry. I couldn't change that. They
right, for sure.
And so, same with Disney. You work on a duck, they own the duck.
Right, of course.
But the thing is, it doesn't have to be bad work for hire. It can be fair. It can be good. Disney pays pretty well, actually. So anyway, I couldn't change that. But the thing is, so now there's all these books that are done and books being done that Marvel can't prove that they own because they don't have any work for hire documents for these people. So I'm trying to tell people that, hey, you really need to sign this work for hire. And so it's kind of a nuclear option here. I mean, they got us in a corner because if they don't sign it, then that's a threat. And my threat, I guess, was, well, then we got to stop using you, and I didn't want to do that.
Sure.
So anyway, then Neil Adams, my buddy, all through this, some of his first work at DC was drawing covers based on my sketches.
Wow.
Okay, because I did sketches for everything.
Yeah, love Neil Adams.
We were big buddies, but he was also kind of a labor leader type. He decided this was a great time to go on strike against Marvel, get all the creators to form a guild and go on strike against Marvel and, get concessions from management. I told him, I said, Neil, the place is about to go out of business. You're not going to help anybody. If you make those demands, they'd rather close the place, And he said, no, I think we can put pressure on him. Oh, Neil, leave me alone. Anyway, but he was trying to help from the outside, and I was trying to help from the inside. And so what really helped was the DC implosion, because the morning after, there was a line out the door all the way to the elevator lobby and beyond that, and people waiting in the downstairs lobby because they couldn't get in upstairs. Artists, writers,
people looking for work,
mostly from DC, looking for work, and all the Marvel guys in line because they didn't want to lose their jobs.
Right, they were ready to sign the contract at that point.
We'll sign it right now. Yes, sir. Okay. So that's all I did that day. Was I had documents signed, and so anyway, that blew over. But then I thought, okay, time for me to make good here. Time for me to live up to all the stuff I've been saying. So we got better conditions for the creators. I doubled the rates. I doubled them again. Kept increasing them after that. I had a pretty free hand.
And didn't you institute a royalty program as well?
Yeah. The president was kind of new, and he said, I don't care what you do as long as you don't lose money. I said, okay, that's a free hand. And so anything I wanted to do, I got it done. I got first to increase the rates. Second, get better benefits. We had life insurance. If you're a freelancer, all you had to do is 3 jobs a year. Okay, health insurance, 3 jobs a year, good health insurance. Same as the company. This isn't just for contract guys. This is for freelancers.
Yeah, that must have been huge for those guys.
Yeah, we had all kinds of other programs. We had, like I said, look, if it's work for hire, we can't expect these guys to buy their own materials, because you can't expect the workers to bring the leather to the shoe factory and then claim you own the shoes.
Right.
You know? So I said, that's it. You bring me your receipts, pens, pencils, ink, a pencil sharpener, and anything. Winsor Newton brush will cost you a couple $100. So it was a good benefit. And so I say, bring me the receipts, or we'll reimburse you for everything. You can take the tax deduction and get a lesser, benefit, or I can just pay for it. You pick. Paid for all their travel. If I asked them to come to the office, I paid. If I asked them to mail, if they were mailing stuff to Marvel, we paid the postage. If they were on the phone with Marvel back in those days, we charged per call. I paid their phone bill. So, and the way I was able to do this is I got the books on time, and I started saving lots of money. And I got rid of the guys who were embezzling or stealing and double vouchering and stuff like that. And I fixed the system so they couldn't do that anymore. And because I fucking more taught me how.
Well, how long did it take you to do that? Like during your tenure, do you think you had it reined in by 1980, 81? Did it take you a few years?
I would say the bulk of it was done in a year. And then came the royalty program, and the royalty program was just tremendous. I mean, because then you're getting not only your page rates, which have gone up dramatically, and all the benefits and stuff like that, but then on top of that, you get basically an incentive based on how well your book sells. And DC had the same basic program as we did. Your book had to sell over 100,000, and then you'd start getting royalties. Their royalty pool was 4%. Same. I said, all right, we'll match that. Our royalty threshold was 100,000. It made sense for economic reasons. That is too boring to explain. Our royalty threshold will be 100,000, but we'll have a 10% royalty pool. And as your sales go up, it's a sliding scale. You get more. The royalties increase as your sales go up. So guess what the X-Men was paying?
I'm going to say about 30 or 40% royalties.
Well, no, it was a 10% pool. But the 10% was huge.
Yeah.
Because 10%
okay.
of like 800,000 copies. And so anyway, and also PS, DC at that time had 3 titles that sold over 100,000. Every Marvel title sold over 100,000. So when I convinced them to do their royalty program, that was a great leap of faith. And Stan helped me talk the board of directors into it, and made it clear to them that we don't do this, and DC does. We're toast. And so they said, it's going to cost us $750,000 off the bottom line, according to these projections. How are you going to make that up? I said, sales will go up. And I said, we will make that back and more. And guess what? It cost us $2 million off the bottom line. Imagine how much money we had to make to pay out $2 million in royalties.
Yeah, in the 80s especially.
Yeah, and like my famous story, one time John Byrne was in the office and I handed him a royalty check for one issue of one comic book for which he had been well paid up front. One issue, one comic book, royalty, $30,000. Here's a check, John. That wasn't the biggest one he ever got.
I bet he was a happy camper that day.
Well, that day he was, yeah. But like I said, that wasn't even the biggest one he ever got. But he happened to be in the office, so I handed it to him.
That's astronomical if you think about it, because it's really just incentivizing these creators to do their absolute best work. And they did, because there was an incentive for it.
And then word spreads. Hey, you can make money at Marvel. So more great guys show up. And then, the sales go up some more because, better books, better things. It took me about a year to get most of that in place, and also a year to get the books on time. I mean, during the time, we published everything we were supposed to publish. We never had an unscheduled reprint, and we did have some fill-ins in that first year because we just had to play catch-up. But by the time that end of the year came, we were... I have a letter from Bob Craig from World Color saying, congratulations, for the first time in its history since 1939, Marvel Comics is on time.
Wow. Yeah, you really accomplished a lot. I mean, your tenure during Marvel Comics, I mean, it's considered the gold standard of comics these days.
Well, we had the best team ever assembled, partially because the other companies are collapsing. Guys like Larry Hama showed up, was able to get Archie Goodwin back, got Louise Simons. You know, I mean, if you can't win with that team, fire the coach. You know,
Yeah.
But anyway, got the books on time, and they stayed on time for the whole time I was there, and after that, because of course there were books in the pipe. You know, from my tenure, even after I left. So about 10 years we stayed on time.
Well,
and I don't know what happened after that.
In 1982, you created helped to create the Epic Comics imprint, which kind of focused on create-your-own titles and fringe stories, almost mimicking independent comic publishers. Did you feel like Epic Comics was expanding the art form when it was initiated?
Well, yeah. I mean, what happened was the people from Metal Hurlant came to us, wanted us to license Metal Hurlant and become the American publisher of Metal Hurlant. And Stan and I looked at Metal. I was familiar with it, but we looked at it together, and he said, "This stuff is like very violent and very sexy." And I said, "Yes." I said, "Okay." So I mean. And he said, "I don't think we should do that." I said, "All right." I said, "Well, how about we do one that's the art is just as good, but the story is what it's about. It's not about the graphic violence or whatever." And so he liked that idea, and so we started working on that. He wasn't involved with the comics, but when he was in the office, he's Stan Lee.
Right.
If I want to talk about something, go see Stan. He mostly was out on the West Coast. But when he was around, I made use of him. So anyway, we started working on it. We hired one guy to edit it. He didn't work out at all. Actually, the president of the company ordered me to fire him because he kept making giant mistakes and costing us many tens of thousands of dollars. So we got rid of him. And then Archie, who he was the editor-in-chief before me, and he had left staff to become a contract writer. But it was hard keeping up, with Archie never wrote 3 books a month in the best month of his life.
Oh, wow.
And that his contract called for him to write 3 books a month. And he was struggling with that. And so I got him to come back and be the editor of Epic. I mean, we had an understanding. I wasn't going to bother him. There was nothing I could teach him. He knew what to do. However, I could pave the road for him. I could take care of the budgets and the lawyers and the licensing people and all that stuff, because I was doing it anyway for the regular comics. And so I did the bureaucracy. He focused on creating the books. And, Archie's maybe the best of all time. I mean, he really amazing. He did great stuff. And it was kind of like, what if Metal Hurlant was more about the content and less about the graphics? Right. And I thought that was good. That was kind of, I guess, the inspiration. And Archie was the perfect guy for it. I wanted a Frazetta cover before we had Archie signed up. I wanted a Frazetta cover on our first issue. So I called the Frazettas, and Ellie Frazetta was the gatekeeper. You didn't talk to Frank. So Ellie answered the phone. I said, "Hi." I said, I'm the editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics, and I want to collect. We don't like you. Hung up on me. And so I told Archie, I said, "Gee, I was trying to get a Frazetta cover." He said, "I'll call Ellie." So he calls her up. "Hey, Ellie, it's Archie." And they're chatting away and talking about the kids and stuff. And then we got 2 Frazetta covers.
Oh, wow.
So, everybody loved Archie. He was ideal for that. He knew everybody. Next thing you know, we got Art Sudan working for us. We got all these other great creators working for us, did brilliant covers. Like I said, I helped that pave the road.
Well, there's so much classic work that came out of your time at Marvel Comics.
Yeah,
some of the most
comics,
greatest comics ever created, almost.
I think so. I think that, but like I say, I had all the best guys in the world. I had, if you walk down the hall and you look to your right at the first door, And there's your art director. That art director works for me. His name is John Romita Sr. Holy cow. It's like a Grandmaster Hall of Fame. And this was Archie over there. You got Larry Hama, Louise Simonson, eventually Carl Potts, Al Milgrom. It's just like the best ever, And if you get guys like that and they know what they're doing, let them do it.
Right, you have the influence of all the golden agers to draw from as well. But, by 1987, you were moving on from Marvel. You tried to purchase it. It didn't exactly work out. And there was also some issues, at least from Marvel's perspective, with the launch of the new universe. And this was in celebration of Marvel's, I believe, 25th anniversary. You created a different comic universe, still published by Marvel, that had original characters, original stories, but it was a little more hyper real. And in a way, it was the proto Valiant Comics, and we'll get to that in just a second. But does it feel strange to you that at the time when you were writing the New Universe comics that you were seemingly condemned by Marvel for the New Universe, but since then they've relaunched the New Universe a few times and even incorporated aspects of it into the main Marvel universe? Is that strange for you?
Yeah. No, see, the story behind the story there is that a couple of years before the 25th anniversary, which was 86, there was a meeting of all the executive staffs, all the vice presidents, the president, and me. I was a vice president. And so none of these people had ever opened a comic book. None of them, right? So they didn't really know what they were talking about. But the publicist person, who was not a vice president, by the way, but she wasn't in the meeting. She had alerted everyone, hey, it's our 25th anniversary coming up. We need to do something. So I got all these people sitting around with me. And, like I said, people had never opened a comic book. And they're suggesting things like, well, we could do a coffee table book. There's a big deal, and it's a bunch of, dumb ideas. And so they all kind of look at me, well, what do you got? My first idea was, I said, well, I get condemned by this because people don't understand and they misunderstand this. But what I said was, how about in January, the anniversary is actually summer. So I said, so how about in January, we announce that in June, all Marvel comic books are finished, canceled, over. I said, and then what we do is in those 6 months, we build toward the end of the Marvel Universe. I said, you think we'll sell any? I said, and then they all end. They're all over as of June. And in July, we launch all new.
Oh, wow.
And the thing is, I said,
that would have been amazing.
What we do is we have such a tangle of continuity and stuff like now. I said, but if we start clean, okay, we keep everything that's good about Spider-Man, and we forget some of the dumb stuff. Iron Man no longer has to be created during the Vietnam War. The Fantastic Four don't have, and so forth. And I said, we just do the second iteration and clean it up and do it better. Keep everything that's good, and and then kind of forget the time where it was Jerry Conway had Hercules tie a chain to Manhattan and pull it out to sea. That doesn't work. And then he pulls it back with the same chain, which now puts the battery up by the Bronx. I don't know. So anyway, the thing is, we get rid of the dumb stuff, and so I was shouted down by the circulation director and the VP of Finance. The circulation director, he brought his assistant who handled the direct market. And they just shouted me down. They said it's we're outselling DC almost 4-1. Everything is selling great. We're doing so good. Why would you change it? I said, all right. I hear you. All right. I said, all right. We're celebrating the birth of a universe. How about we create another one? And everyone said, oh, that's great. Okay. And I figured we'd start with eight titles or 12. I can't remember. So anyway, by the time I left that meeting, I had a huge development budget, like $250,000 just to develop our properties. And and it was going to have guaranteed royalties for people because, was Walt going to leave Thor to do something new unless he's guaranteed that his income won't drop, that kind of thing. So I had all kinds of, money, marketing budget, all kinds of stuff to play with. And then about 2 weeks later, the president of the company calls me to his office, and he says, "How much have you spent?" And I said, "I don't know, 10, 20,000 or something. I don't know." And he said, "Don't spend another penny." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "I don't want to spend another nickel on this thing." I said, "Well, why?" "Well, here's why." He didn't say it. But what was why was because he and the Cadence board of directors had taken Cadence private, taken it off the stock market. It was now owned by 6 guys. It was 7 originally. They got rid of one. Six guys. And they were planning to sell Marvel. Okay. The Cadence as a company had a lot of little companies. Marvel was the crown jewel. So they were planning to sell Marvel, and they didn't want to invest any money. Okay, because if you're trying to sell it, all you want to do is put money on the bottom line, save money, do anything you can to make a little extra money, because companies like Marvel are sold for a multiple of their pre-tax profit.
Right.
All right. So every penny you can put on the bottom line, you're probably going to get 25 pennies back when you sell the company. So okay. He said, "I don't want you." I said, "Well, you mean you don't want us to do it?" He said, "No, I want you to do it. You just have to do it on staff." What? So anyway, you'll notice in the New Universe books, basically, Archie came to my rescue. He was so good. He said, "I'll help you," and he did, and he created half of the things. And you'll notice in the credits that a lot of the credits are assistant editors, me, and Archie, because they were the only ones who would help me for free.
Wow, because there really was no budget at that point.
No, we had no money. I stole some money from the regular Marvel budget, but not enough to pay royalties and stuff. I just used it for promotion. So basically, it wasn't like I did it and they were mad at me. It was that, they had a whole different agenda. As soon as they decided to sell the company, man, they're not interested. They don't care, and do it on staff. We don't care how hard it is on you. We'll be gone.
Right.
and eventually they were.
And by 1987, the New Universe comics were still going, but they felt like it was time for you and Marvel's, tenure to end. And then you moved on from there, but you knew that it was for sale because you had tried to purchase it yourself, right?
Well, what happened was that they did sell it. They sold it towards the end of 1986. The deal actually closed, I think, in January, early January of 1987. The deal actually closed. The board of directors succeeded in selling the company to New World Pictures, which then changed its name to New World Entertainment.
Right.
But at any rate, so they succeeded in selling the company, and I knew a lot about business and stuff like that, but I didn't go to business school or whatever, and I didn't. Paul Levitz would have known exactly what to do. He is an MBA, right?
Okay.
I just what I didn't realize is I was a key man. They couldn't sell it without me. I had a lot of clout that I didn't know I had, and so I stuck around, and the place was sold. One of the reasons I stuck around is that I was complaining that they were kind of eviscerating all my programs. Like they took away the 401k, they took away the pension plan. They cashed out the pension plan. They eviscerated our health care.
Oh my God!
They made it into a crummy HMO that nobody took. They just and of course a lot of this is being blamed on me. And what am I going to tell the guys? Upstairs is screwing you. In which case they all quit and go to DC. In which case it's Jim Shooter's driving talent away. So anyway, I kept telling guys, I'm trying to fix it. I'm working on it. I'll see what I can do. And so Walt Simonson came. He says, how come I'm getting my foreign royalties on Star Slammer? I said, I'll look into it. I found out that they deliberately weren't paying foreign royalties anymore. They said, well, if he becomes a little lawyer, maybe we'll consider it. I'm like, I tell Walt, bring your lawyer. He quits.
So it seemed like things were deteriorating.
I'm fighting these guys every day. The company is sold. And one of the reasons I stuck around is because Galton said, the day the company is sold, we're going to fix everything. And I said, all right. And, he basically had been pretty honest with me up to then. But on the day the company was sold, I said, all right, let's start fixing. And he told me, I don't know if I can say this or not. He said, fuck you.
Oh, you can.
Because he had his money, and he was one of the partners. And then I went down and I wrote my resignation letter, and then I thought about it, and I said, no, I'm gonna make trouble. And so I wrote instead a letter to the new owners telling them where the bodies were buried. And so we had a kind of stormy 4 months there, where the new owners were looking into all the stuff I said, and management people upstairs who were partners in the sale hated me because I ratted them out.
Right.
And so they hated me, and they started undercutting me. It was like I didn't even work there anymore. They're hiring people. I walk past an office, I see a guy, I don't even know who he is. I say, who are you? I'm the editor of such and such. Huh? All right. They basically just forced me out.
You pretty much neutered all your abilities and then forced you out.
Yeah. And then, what happened was it forced me out. Basically they walled me in, so I wasn't even involved anymore, and spent all my time upstairs with them fighting anyway. And then they fired me. Once they thought that they had somebody who could replace me, they fired me. That would have been in April, I guess.
Right, and is that when you got the idea to try to purchase Marvel, and then you teamed up with, I believe his name was Steve Masarski? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, and Winston Folks. But the thing is, after I left Marvel, after I was fired, a couple of editors said, well, why don't you write for us? And then they were told, no, you're not allowed to hire him. And so I couldn't I was blacklisted there. And I was trying to make a living and get a gig. Well, meanwhile, I was kind of keeping track of Marvel and the trade magazines. I always get all the trade papers. I got the Daily Variety and Weekly Variety, and a lot of the better
sure.
Fan magazines. The Comic Spires guy and all that stuff. And so I was kind of keeping track of things, and I realized that this conglomerate that had bought Marvel was financed by junk bonds, paying tremendous interest. And they were losing $1 million a day. Not Marvel, the whole thing was losing $1 million a day. And Marvel sales were declining because the chaos was coming back and things were being late again. And so I said, these new buyers, New World people, they're going to have to sell something, and they don't have anything worth anything except Marvel. So through a friend, I met this guy, Winston Folks, who was ex-Time Incorporated, high-ranking senior financial guy. And I also I met this guy, Steve Masarski. He actually hired me to do a job. He was a lawyer, but he was an entertainment lawyer. He wanted to produce a show. Originally, he wanted to produce a Cabbage Patch, like arena show, traveling arena show.
Right, and he worked with the Allman Brothers as well, right?
Yeah, so he knew something about traveling shows. He was the Allman Brothers road manager. So anyway, among other things, he also was lawyer for Ziggy Marley and the Allman Brothers guys and a few other. What's his name? Aerosmith.
Oh wow.
And so he was connected. So he wanted to originally do Cabbage Patch Kids, and they weren't available. So he went to Marvel. And he got the license to do an arena show Marvel characters. And this is how stupid the people upstairs were in those days. Steve Masarski got a 2-year license, all characters, all live-action rights for all Marvel characters for $12,500 a year.
Oh, my God.
And they thought they were stealing the money because they didn't have any idea no one had ever opened a book. I had this one executive, Joe Calamari, he was executive vice president. And so he kind of took the lead in licensing movie rights. Basically, anyone who walked in the door with $5,000, whether they had any credentials or not, they could license any Marvel comic character they wanted. And he thought that Spectacular Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man were two different characters. So he licensed them to two competing movie companies.
Oh my God, that just shows how out of touch he was.
He licensed the Avengers to one guy and Iron Man to another guy, not thinking, not having any clue that Iron Man was in the Avengers, and so forth. So, it was a nightmare.
So was Steve pretty excited that he got the license for this universe?
Steve couldn't believe it. When they told him they wanted $25,000 for 2 years, he's like, okay, got that right here. And I mean, he was just stunned. And so then he says to the guy, licensing guy, Doug McKenzie, good guy, one of the few guys up there actually ever did open a comic book. He says to him, he said, I don't know how to get a writer for this. And McKenzie said, and this is before I got there. McKenzie said, our editor-in-chief's a genius. He said, you talk to him and he'll fix you up with a really good writer. And Masarsky said, great. So after he signs the deal, he says, all right, now I want to meet this genius editor-in-chief of yours. They say, well, we fired him last week. and he said, well, what am I going to do now? And so McKenzie says, get him to write it. He said that it'll be great. He says he'll do a good job, and if he writes it, there won't be any problems getting it approved or anything because he knows the characters like a bag of sand. So Masarsky calls me up, hires me to write this arena show, and I wrote it. And he raised $1 million, and then he finally raised the rest. He needed $3.5 million. He raised the rest of it from Radio City. He raised $1 million from MCA Universal, and then he raised 2.5 from Radio City. But Radio City said, "Look, you've never produced a show like this. We'll produce it. Don't worry, you'll get your money. But we'll take over the production and work with MCA Universal and so forth." And so Masarsky was happy. He's going to be an executive producer. He doesn't have to do all that much work, and he gets money. And I was going to get paid well because I wrote the script. And however, he got Radio City kind of too late. There wasn't quite enough time to mount the show. Okay, they needed an extension on his contract. By this time, somebody had wised him up at Marvel, and so when he went back to try to get an extension on his contract, right, they wanted like $5 million. And he said, "What? How can that be? So anyway, he actually arranged a meeting with the executives from MCA Universal, the executives from Radio City, Joe Calamari, who was a senior vice president or something at Marvel, and himself. And the MCA Universal people and the Radio City people trying to talk to Calamari, saying, "You're out of your mind. You're going to make a fortune. This is going to bring in so much money. He said, why are you, if you make it an impossible barrier, we're going to be able to do it." So he's, "Nope, that's the price." Okay. So what happens is that right after the contract runs out, Masarsky contract runs out, Calamari calls MCA Universal and he calls Radio City. He says, "Let's do the deal without this idiot." Right?
Oh.
So they were just trying to get rid of Masarsky. So anyway, I mean, they're going along. They're working on this show, and they're starting to work on it. And then I get a call from this guy. I think his name is Phil Maher, I think. Anyway, Radio City exec. And he says, "Jim," he says, "Marvel says they own your script. Is that true?" I said, "No, they don't own my script." I said, "Well, how would they own my script?" I said, "I never signed anything. I had a handshake with Masarsky." And he says, "Well, they claim that it was work for hire and they own it." I said, make them show you a piece of paper that says so." So anyway, he called a meeting with me, Calamari, Masarsky, and some Radio City execs. And so Calamari keeps insisting that Marvel owns my script. I said, "Just prove it. I don't own it. I didn't sign any work for hire. I didn't sign any contract at all. And he said, "You had no right to make that deal." I said, "I'm a freelance. I'll make any deal I want." And so he's railing at me and stuff. And so Masarsky had told the Radio City guy what my deal was. And my deal with Masarsky was pretty rich. And so the Radio City guy says, "Jim, this pretty rich deal that you cooked up with Masarsky here." He said, "Did you want all this?" You know, I said, what's normal? And they said, well, normally the writer gets 2%, the lyricist gets 2%, the composer gets 2%. And I said, fine, I demand to be treated normally. And so he turns to Joe Calamari. He says, "This is the most reasonable man in the world, Joe. Let's make a deal." You know, and Calamari is losing his mind, and it's. So finally, he offers, "All right, Marvel and Jim will split the writer's share. In other words, he gets 1%, Marvel gets 1%." And I said, "No, I demand to be treated normally." And so he's railing at me, sticking his finger in my face and yelling and stuff. And then he says, "We don't need your script. We get a new script. I'll have Stan Lee himself write the script." And this is one of my greatest Pyrrhic victories, is the Radio City guy taps his finger on my script and says, "Joe, we like this one."
Dang.
So he keeps yelling and stuff. So Masarsky says, "Hey, we're not getting anywhere." I said, "Yeah, okay, let's go." So we left. And they did announce that Stan was going to write a script. Never happened. And basically at that point, Stan wasn't going to do any massive project like that. He'd probably get someone to help him with it, and I don't know if it even started, but it was never done. And if they had just let it go, Spider-Man and the Night of Doom, which was the name of my show, would have debuted on the Radio City Music Hall stage 2 weeks after the first Batman movie. It was such a huge hit.
Oh,
do you think anyone would have gone?
That would have been massive.
Think anyone would have gone?
It would have been massive. Yeah. It would have been spectacular.
It was going to tour. It was going to tour all the Nederlander arenas, all the MCA Universal arenas, and some other ones besides, because those were already booked. Masarsky booked us. And, so anyway, all right, so here we are. This takes me a while to get through all this process. And then I need a gig. So we started looking. He said, "Why don't we start a company?" And I said, "All right, let's do that." So we started looking to raise money and perhaps start a company. We made an attempt to buy Harvey Comics. They couldn't prove they owned anything. They didn't have a single piece of paper from anybody.
Oh, really? People don't really know that. That's actually not really well publicized. So first you tried to buy Harvey Comics.
Yeah, we tried to buy Harvey. We looked into a couple other things. Stan Weston, you may have heard the name. He's the guy who invented G.I. Joe. Okay. Legend in the toy and licensing business. He had a little team he put together, and they were interested in doing a startup with us. But a lot of, not very many venture places want to do startups. They want to buy things.
Right.
But we did find one, and they financed the start of Valiant, and
that was Triumph Capital. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was Triumph Capital. Now, in that year, 1988, ending in 89, that's when I tried to buy Marvel with Masarsky.
Okay.
And my financial guy, Winston Folks, and failed. What happened was there were 9 bidders in the auction. We were the only bidder who actually made a bid. And the reason I know that is because none of the other places could get management. And how do I know that? Because they all called me. Okay?
Okay.
So all the other bidders, when they couldn't get management, me, somebody like me, they dropped out. We were the only bid. For 2 weeks, we thought we won. And then we signed papers, we're going to, be in business pretty soon. We're making plans. And then my financial guy calls me like 6 a.m. He says, "Have you read the journal?" I said, 6 a.m. I haven't read the journal, And he said, Perlman bought Marvel. I said, "How can that be?" He said, he was an insider. He used us as an arm's length bid. So as an insider, you need an arm's length bid so you can also be a buyer.
Right. So you need to gauge the price.
Yeah, it has. So that sets the price. So we were just set up as a stalking horse. He never intended to let anybody else buy it, and he owned 20% of New World Pictures, which was selling it, and because we made a bid, he was able to swoop in and buy. Usually they have a process called ratcheting, which if they get two bidders, they play them off against each other, drive the price up. And we were prepared for that. We bid $81 million. He bid 82.5.
But you didn't get to counterbid.
No, we didn't. He wasn't even in the auction. We probably could have gone up maybe to 115.
Okay.
But because we'd chased North America, and we had a good equity partner, and so anyway, but we weren't even given an opportunity. I mean, he bid $1.5 million more than us, and took it, and we didn't get any chance to reply or anything. His CEO he interviewed me to be the president of Marvel, and we both agreed that probably wasn't a good idea. But anyways, it's like financial adventures. Who cares? I don't know. But so we gave it a try, and then what happened was we started Valiant.
Yeah, you had the money. You had the money, and you had the initiative, the drive to do it. So now you have a chance to start something new.
Yeah, so we had Triumph Capital, and we ended up with net probably $1,125,000, which is not a lot. And so we started and we tried. And what went wrong was that the venture capital company was run by a lady named Melanie Oken. Masarsky started dating her.
Yes.
They got married. Okay, all of a sudden he's her partner, not my partner. And so he decides, hey, screw your superheroes that you've gone through hell to license, the Gold Key characters, and then all the ones I was making up. He said, screw them. Let's do Nintendo comics.
Right. So before Valiant had any superhero comics that they released, you first had two licenses that you procured. One was from Nintendo Comics, and the other was from the WWF, now the WWE.
Right, World Wrestling. And the thing is, why did we get those licenses? Because Masarsky was the media and entertainment lawyer on retainer for both of those companies. And so he made a deal with himself, and his wife approved it. And so he gets paid a big fat fee, I guess hundreds of thousands of dollars for these two things, because as the lawyer, he gets paid this fat fee out of my money. I mean, our money, Valiant's money. And now we're doing Nintendo comics, and now we're doing wrestling comics. And the thing is, we did our best, because the thing is, like, why didn't I quit? Well, because Don Perlin had come to work for me, J.J. Jackson, and a few other people. By coming to work for me, they were officially blacklisted at Marvel and those other places. And so
you felt a responsibility.
If I walked out, they're on the street and they can't get a job.
Right.
So I said, no, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this stuff. We're going to do our best. We're going to make it work. We're going to make it sell. And if it's selling and it makes a little bit of money, I can raise money and buy these turkeys out, because they don't care about anything but money.
Right.
And so that was my goal, and I did my best, but they weren't likely to succeed. You're not likely to succeed with Nintendo comics and with wrestling.
Well, you did think that you had other avenues, because it sounds like you did have promises from WWF and also Nintendo that they would put those comics in various promotional places, and they didn't they didn't follow through with that.
No, not at all. Masarsky, his deal with himself was that Nintendo was going to give us their 3 million name mailing list, and that we were going to be they were going to arrange to have our books on display where the games are sold, right next to the games. And the World Wrestling had a plan to have us on sale in the venues. They reneged on all that. I mean, Masarsky made the deal with himself, and then they said, we're not doing that.
Yeah, and the first Nintendo comic that was ever published was the Nintendo Sneak Peek, which recently sold for a really high price on eBay. And you also had a couple comics.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, it went for like $1,800.
Wow.
It was, it's a 9.8 CGC, so that did add a little value. But, it is considered the first Valiant comic, so that has some value there. But you also did the KFC comic and Cheezosaurus Rex. Was that just companies coming to you for promotional work at that point?
No, I mean, like, it took us a while. First of all, we blew through our $1.125 pretty quick, because the Nintendo books weren't selling, and the wrestling books did even worse, and so we're still paying my employees and paying for the rent and everything. So we blew through that. Well, then Triumph Capital, Masarsky's wife, agreed to fund us on certain terms for a while. All right. So, so anyway, we're trying to do the superheroes and turn that around, because that started okay, but not great. I mean, we're selling like 80-some thousand of the first issue of Magnus.
Right.
70-some.
Which, again,
Solar.
today, those would be astronomical numbers. But you brought back, you incorporated some comic properties from the 60s, Magnus Robot Fighter, Solar Man of the Atom, and later after you left with Turok. But you brought those in to
it was Turok with me. I wrote the first Turok story. I drew the first ad myself. I created everything to do with Turok. That's me. But the thing is, the Turok in his own book came after me.
Right. That's right. Magnus 12.
Yes. Anyway, so by the time we were doing superheroes and starting to get going on those, we're like $3 million in the hole. And I mean, like the fact that we sold 80,000 of Magnus, our break even was probably 30,000. So okay, we made some money, but not nearly enough, and Solar and so forth, and also. Those numbers went down, okay, for a little while, and I'm trying to do anything to make money, anything, and so I came up with the idea, maybe we can do some custom comics and bring in some cash. And to Masarsky's credit, he did track down Kraft General Foods and KFC. And I guess we did pitch to them, and then we did those books. They didn't make us a fortune, but they brought some money in, and because the thing is, there were 2 million copies of Cheezosaurus and 1 million copies of KFC, and I think we got some small payment per copy, really tiny payment per copy. But at any rate, we were doing anything to make us a few bucks.
Right, generate.
We did a custom comic book. I did a custom comic book for a company, I think it was called PHH, which was one of the little phone companies. Guess what? Doug McKenzie had left Marvel and started working for this company, PHH. He's the one that called me and said, "Hey, would you do us a little custom comic?" Sure.
Wow, I don't think people realize that one's out there. PHH, there's one more custom comic as yet to be found. That's one I haven't ever noticed. KFC I've seen, the Cheezosaurus Rex I've seen, but the PHH Valiant comic I have never seen.
I think so. It's a phone company. I think that's the name. But at any rate, so we were just doing anything, scrambling every which way to try to make money. And also, another thing people don't know is that, since we were living off of Masarsky's wife's, largesse, they pretty much they could call the shots. They put one of their guys in our place to watch over us. His name was Fred Pierce. He later worked for Wizard. And then he worked other places too, I guess.
He's still around. Still working at.
Yeah, he's still around.
He's still working at the current iteration of Valiant Comics, believe it or not.
Yeah, I know. He came back after a while. That's another story. But the thing is, like, he was kind of the watchdog. And when he was there, he wasn't that bad. He really kind of respected what I was doing and wasn't a jerk about it, and so. He looked for things that he could do, and he basically started handling our printing production, not the in-house printing production, which was good. And he also did the financial stuff. So because they fired Winston Folks. When Winston found out that Masarsky was sleeping with Melanie Okun, he raised a fuss, and so they fired him. Got rid of him. And they had enough votes on the board that they could do that. They actually needed my vote, but I said, look, when Winston says it's okay with him, I said, then you got my vote. And so Winston negotiated himself a little parachute and said it was okay. So I let him fire him because it was going to be like fire him or close the company. It's always the nuclear option.
Right.
So anyway, because we're paying freelancers, say, and then we have staff people. well, to save money, Melanie Oka said, well, why don't we fire some of these staff people? Let's get rid of them. I kept explaining, you have to have a critical mass. You have to have somebody doing marketing. You need your paste up and production people. You need, you can't just say, well, fire 6 people, and the work will still get done, because it won't. And so they worked out a plan. I think maybe it was Fred's idea, because a lot of us who were on staff also, I did almost all the writing.
Right.
Layden did some inking. Perlin was penciling Solar. JJ colored things. For Jade Mady colored things, and he lettered things. And so there was some work you'd ordinarily farm out that was being done
in-house
by staff people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they said, okay, every person has to do enough money that the equivalent amount of freelance payment would pay their salary. In other words, if you're getting $20,000 to be the in-house letterer, you have to do $20,000 worth of lettering if you were paying a freelancer. Okay, you see?
Right.
In other words, you had to pay for yourself.
Right.
Okay. So they kept track of everybody's quota, all right, and how much they got paid, and each month they compare, like how much did Jade Mady letter and color, and how much was his salary. Well, everybody had trouble meeting that because they're only counting like pages, and of course there's other things to do. There's other management things. JJ was doing a lot of the pre-press production work. How many pages can she color while doing the pre-press production? Jade was doing a lot of other office.
People were wearing multiple hats, it sounds like.
Yeah, Don Perlin was spending time coaching the young artists, and okay, so anyway, I made a deal with Fred Pierce. I was the highest paid person, so I had the biggest quota. I had a quota, and so I made a deal with him. I said, if I beat my quota, can we take money from my output and apply it to other people? He says, I think I can arrange that. I said, all right, fine. So, like I said, I was the highest paid guy. So, typical month, J.J. Jackson wouldn't make her quota. Perlin usually came close. Layton wouldn't make his quota. Jade Mady wouldn't make his quota. Almost nobody makes quota. I beat mine by triple. All right, just tell you how many hours I was working. I would get up in the morning, go to work, and work till I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. I'd sleep a few hours and go back to work.
But you absolutely loved it, though, didn't you? You loved every second.
I did this for 540 days. Oh, I loved doing it, but I almost killed myself. And so, but I kept beating my quota by enough to keep those other people employed. And then, we, one way or another, we did. And then guess what? It starts to turn around. We did that Black Solar book.
Right. That was a beautiful book.
Gigantic hit. And then, and by that time, Archer and Armstrong was going, and Eternal Warriors had hit, and all the other books started to pick up. And Harbinger, which had been the lowest for a while, people started to catch on. Hey, this Lapham guy's pretty good. And it becomes our bestseller.
It was amazing. It felt like, from my perspective as a reader, it felt like a new golden age was happening before our eyes of comics. There was these comics that were so much more emotionally powerful than what was being released from the other publishers at the time. It was very stark when you saw those the comics and you read the comics. It was such a dramatic difference from what was going on. But it's really because you had the freedom to do whatever you wanted in a way, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, nobody was telling me what to write, except they wanted to cancel Harbinger, and that's one fight I won. I said, hell no. It was selling like 26,000 copies in the 4th issue, so that's a couple little under break even.
Right.
I said, hell no. I said, this guy's the next Frank Miller. Leave him alone.
Oh, he's amazing. David Lapham is like insane.
I backed him down, and then all of a sudden people say, hey, wait, this is good. And it starts climbing. And Exo did well too. And we turned it around. And then by the time summer came along, we were making so much money that, Melanie and Masarsky, they started quietly shopping the company behind my back. Okay. And when it finally sort of comes out that they're planning to sell the company, of course, I owned enough stock that I could prevent that. So they had to somehow, get me in line. And they did what it's in financial circles is called a cram down. They basically did everything they could to force it,
Right.
threatening people and dragging you from meeting to meeting and have people telling you how selfish you were. And so anyway, they were trying to do that. I found out, some of this information came later, but I found Winston was fired, but he was still a stockholder. So he got all the reports. So he would clue me in, because they were keeping me in the dark as much as they
Sure.
did. And so it comes out that they have an offer from Paramount for $250 million. Billion with a B. $250 million.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And so they're desperate to have me sign documents. And I'm looking at these documents. It's a 10-year employment contract that specifies no title, no position, and no salary. And it has a clause in there that says if I fail to report to the new CEO, or if I fail to obey the new CEO, they can claw back all my stock. Take it. Just gone.
Oh, that's insane.
The new CEO, the boss they were bringing in over me, was going to be Masarsky's brother-in-law.
Oh, great.
Okay. Yeah, that's a family affair. So, and there was one more clause in the contract that said if I failed to engender good morale, they could claw back all my stock. Right.
So very, very abstract.
So I come in one day and piss off a letterer, and then they take all my stuff back. Yeah, I said, you know what? I'm going to die later, or I'm going to die now. So I'll die now. And I just refused to sign everything. Well, a whole bunch of bad stuff happened. They thought maybe they could get by without me. They fired me, and they made Barry Windsor Smith the president of the company, so that they have a name person, for the front man.
Sure.
They let Bob Bladen had been kind of running the bullpen, so they made him, run the whole operation there, the comics creating part of the operation.
Right.
And they brought in a couple other people, and they thought, they could maybe, do it without me. Well,
one of the worst decisions in comic book
Paramount
history,
found out
by the
that
way.
I was gone. Huh?
One of the worst decisions in comic book history, by the way.
Yeah. I told him, I said, you fools. I was building a multi-billion-dollar enterprise.
I know. It's insane.
I said, you just should have let me do it, And then, when Paramount found out that they'd fired me, they dropped out. They said that. And this is the quote: "The creative guy is gone." That's what they said.
Ooh.
How do I know that? Because a few years later, I was working at Defiant, and I get a call from Victor Kaufman, big Hollywood big shot. Okay, and he was running a thing called Savoy Pictures. Him and his partner Victor Corman, and they were interested in buying Defiant. I went up to see him and met him. I met him, and one of the guys on his board was a guy named Enrique Sr. Enrique Sr. was the number 2 man at Allen and Company. Allen and Company conducted the sale of Valiant. They did eventually sell it to Acclaim Entertainment.
Right, of course. We'll get to that.
He was the guy who made the $250 million deal. He's the one that told me. We're sitting there waiting for Victor at this one meeting. He says, "Do you know what actually happened at Valiant?" I said, "Well, some of it, And so he told me the whole story, including the creative guy is gone, and there goes your quarter bill.
Oh my God.
So anyway, so I got a lot of secret information from him, and I did. So all right, another Pyrrhic victory. I lead the league.
Well, before you left Valiant, I mean, you had some incredible stories. Some of the books that first year or so, what people now call pre-Unity Valiant, is some of the best comic work ever done by anyone ever. The Harbinger stories are
Thank you.
astoundingly good.
We have poured our hearts into it. You know,
It seemed that way.
Don Perlin poured his heart into it. I poured my heart into it. JJ poured her heart into it. Leighton took vacations.
I know. It was pretty obvious because after you left, there was a considerable and steep decline in quality, you know, within a few months after your departure. It was pretty obvious that they ruined everything. And not only that, they purposely tried to get away from every single thing that you had written or created within that universe. Within a year of your departure, it was a completely different company with completely different style.
Yeah. Well, I think, the thing is that, you know, that for those pre-Unity days and Unity, I was writing almost everything. And a couple times I got people to help me, and I ended up having to do a lot of rewrites and a lot of corrections and stuff like that. I had this lady named Faye Perozich working on Shadow Man, and she's a lovely lady. I'm sure she's, you know, going to grow up into maybe she did already grow up to be a terrific writer, but she was pretty new. And so there were a lot of rough edges on it. I couldn't just let it go. I mean, I had to put a lot of work into it anyway. Right. And the same thing with David Michelinie, who was writing Rye. You know, when it came to the Unity books, he said, I can't do this, you do it. You know, so I did. You know, there's all kinds of credits all over these early Valiant books. And the thing is, a lot of them are phony. Why? Because I didn't have money to reward people with, so I gave them credit. You know, I didn't have, and also the thing is, because Fred Pierce and I were using my overage on my quota to pay for Leighton and to pay for, you know, Jade Mady and everybody.
Right. So it wasn't just your writing.
Credits.
Yeah, it wasn't just your writing. Your actual pay was going to pay these guys who couldn't hit their quotas.
Yeah, and so the thing is, it wasn't their fault. I mean, they were doing the best they could. But,
sure.
But so what would happen is you'd find like J.J. Jackson as an editor credits. Shit, sorry. But she you know, she wasn't editing. I mean, she probably could. She's a brilliant lady. But no, she had her hands full with the production and the coloring and so forth. And you know, I see Leighton's name as writer. No.
Right.
And you'll see, you know, Perlin's name as editor or this or that. And there was a bunch of smoke screen.
Well, I do want to,
you know, for the financial people.
I do want to ask you a few questions about that time because just as a fan of that time. So the first story arc for the Magnus Robot Fighter was called Steel Nation, and for a brief time it was solicited that there would be a Steel Nation director's cut re-release with additional story pages and additional content. Do you happen to remember what some of that content was that was going to be in this director's cut that was never released?
When was this announced?
1989 or 90. It was within that, while you were there, that first year.
Okay. That's something I always sort of wanted to do with a lot of books when I was at Marvel, was like with Secret Wars, you know, go through and have some things changed and fixed or improved or deepened or broadened or whatever. And stuff like that. You know, I mean, that idea had occurred to me at Marvel, and that seemed like a good thing to do it on. Because Steel Nation, with the 0 issue and the 4 issues that the story took, that was it was a nice one story. Each issue stood by itself. Each issue stood by itself. I used to explain to people, I said, you know, there's lots of ways to do continued stories. I can tell you all of them. One way is to have each issue be a story, and yet they kind of all add up into a bigger story. Like if you're telling World War II, you know, you do the story of Pearl Harbor, you do the story of you know, invasion of Normandy, you do the Battle of the Bulge, you do the, you know, adds up to World War II. Each one is its own story. You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
And that's what I tried to do with Magnus. Each one was, you know, you could read it by itself and feel like you'd read a story, you know, but if you read them all, it was better.
Well, that is the true comic craft way to tell a story. I mean, really, because for people that are buying a single issue, that they want to have a complete experience for that single issue. But with Unity, with the Unity crossover, which for me was really when Valiant Comics broke, that's when it really started to hit the mainstream press. It was pretty much, in my opinion, the greatest comic crossover of all time. It really incorporated, it was almost biblical in the way it incorporated the same story, but from different perspectives, much like the New Testament of the Bible. But Unity number 0 was written solely by you. But in that summer of 92 is when you had your falling out with Voyager Communications. And by number 1, by Unity number 1, which is the 18th chapter of the Unity saga, you had a shared plot credit and the script was written by Bob Layton. So was there story?
So written by Layton.
Do you know if you had a different idea of what Unity number 1 was going to be compared to what was actually published?
What was actually published was pretty much what I did. The thing is, I don't know. I think that some of them, some little bits or pieces were changed here and there because they weren't going to do a few different directions than I had planned. But a lot of those lines are mine. I recognize them. I say, oh yeah, I wrote that. And you know, but like I say, it's like some of that early stuff you can't trust the credits, especially after they got rid of me. You can't trust the credits.
It's been mentioned by the writer Kevin Van Hook, and is it true that before you left Valiant, he was slated to take over Solar, and Bob Hall was slated to take over Shadow Man? Is that true?
No.
Okay, so they've both claimed that publicly. So you're saying that's not the case?
No.
Because Kevin Van Hook specifically said that you had hired him to write Solar, and he was already coming out before your departure. I'm glad you're clearing that up.
No, I didn't. I can't remember how we got Kevin Van Hook. We needed somebody, and I think somebody knew him. Maybe Layton. I don't know. Okay. But anyway, we hired him, and he was pretty raw. I mean, he was rough around the edges. I certainly didn't have any big plans for him as a writer.
Okay, that's totally different.
Well, I mean, the thing is, a lot of revisionist history was done there. I mean, Bob Layton tells everybody he was brought in as a co-founder. You know, of course, shit. And he was brought in as an inker. And why was he brought in as an inker? Because he burned his bridges at DC. They would have nothing to do with him over personal matters that we don't need to discuss.
Sure.
And then at Marvel, after I left there, when his contract came to its end, they told him, we're not renewing it and we have no work for you. Go away. Because, I mean, he had a way of making people unhappy.
No, I understand.
So at any rate, I mean, he had no place else to go. And I was startup. I needed an anchor, you know, and he shows up. I said, well, okay, I don't really love Bob's thinking, but I mean, there's a lot of good things about it, but there's also, you know, some things he's pretty hard-headed about.
Yeah, you're definitely right about the revisionist history aspect. Oh my goodness. I mean, that's part of the reason.
Anyway, so
go ahead.
I was just going to say that. So a lot of that stuff they tried to you know, retrofit the history and you know, and the whole thing about Jim was a control freak and Jim, you know, we had this wonderful deal and Jim, you know, wouldn't give up any control and he's a megalomaniac and this and that. You know how he is, you know, that kind of thing.
No, I'm devastated by it.
There's nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I'm devastated by what happened from a historical standpoint because the truth is pretty obvious, even from the outside. But during your tenure at that time, were there any inventory stories or anything from your pre-Unity time at Valiant that never saw the light of day? I know there was a character that you're working on, Vandal the Hunter, but that's all I really know.
I never heard of Vandal the Hunter. I don't know anything about it.
Okay, that's another revisionist history thing.
Yeah, listen, it was all I could do to get out this month's books. Okay, P.S. Just like at Marvel, at Valiant, every book made shipping while I was there.
Right.
Every book made shipping. And so, you know, I mean, no, I handled whatever.
It was a character it seemed like they were going to cook up for Barry Windsor Smith, a Conan analog, before he took off to Ultraverse in 1994. But if you could quantize it or put a percentage on it, how much of the pre-Unity Valiant storyline and characters did you create that came from your mind specifically? You say 80%, 90%?
99.
Wow.
99. because even if somebody else worked on it or somebody else contributed ideas, I wanted us all to work in one big room. And so I would do everything I could to include people. Like I said, we didn't have money, so I want everybody to feel like, they're part of it. And so I'd be sitting there and I'd say, I need a girl's name, and somebody would say, Lucy, call her Lucy. And, and also like EXO. Okay. EXO, for instance, John Hartz and Bob Layton will tell you they created EXO. Okay. Let's see what happened. What happened was, after Magnus and Solar, the next book I wanted to do was Harbinger. And Harbinger was mostly kids in ordinary clothes, because I couldn't imagine everybody putting on their spandex suits all the time.
Right. In a more real-world scenario.
I said, don't worry. I have a way to get them into a spandex suit for a group shot. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of that. But no, I'm not going to have them behave like cipher kids, And also, something I did, it's just a test, and no one that has ever noticed it but me, is that the first little group of Harbinger kids, the good guy kids, they're all white kids. Okay? Am I a racist? Hell no. What I wanted to do was, I didn't want to do the one Asian, the one black person, the one Hispanic person, the one, no, I'm not doing Captain Planet here, And P.S., almost immediately, I think second issue, their mentor is a black doctor. P.S., very soon afterwards, we started bringing in other characters. P.S., the other Harbingers, the ones who thought they were the good guys, there were a lot more of them, so there was a big diversity. And but I did that on purpose to see if anybody would notice, and the fact is nobody did. And like I said, it was only, just luck of the draw as far as I was concerned. They just, these are the first couple of kids they run into. That's it.
Right.
And so, it's like, I was always like trying to throw down cliches and dance upon them.
Well, like I said, they're still considered some of the greatest comics created. For me, they have insane rereadability. Like, you can pick up
thanks.
Pre-Unity Valiant and you can read it. I can't even tell you how many times I've reread the Pre-Unity Valiant comics. Hundreds of times.
That's good.
Because that's the key. Like, modern comics, they've lost that. But the key is the rereadability, to pick up, to still be captivated, for it to still be entertaining. The artwork was clean. The dialogue was clean. There was no sound effects. There were so many things that you updated to make it seem more mature that was noticeable at that time. But from Valiant Comics, you moved on to Defiant Comics because you had a falling out. Obviously, after Unity, they had let you go. You moved on right away. You started another comic book company with a lot of the artists like David Lapham that you had worked with at Valiant. But you mentioned in past interviews that you had two options for funding for Defiant Comics. One was the River Group, who turned out not to be the right choice. But who was the second choice? No, it didn't. Who was the second choice that you could have chose, but instead you chose the River Group?
Trying to think of the name of the company. It's a venture and financial firm that Patrikoff and Company. And Patrikoff, senior Patrikoff, was one of, I think, Clinton's financial advisors.
Oh, wow.
Really nice company, and they didn't do startups, but they were interested in doing mine. And it really came down to the coin toss. And the only reason I went with the River Group was because there was kind of a built-in trading card license, and I said, "Well, good, bring some money in quick." And that turned out to be a bad idea. It was, Valiant, my contracts. When we did the contracts for Valiant, of course, I didn't know at that point that Melanie and Masarsky were sleeping together. And Masarsky was my lawyer. And there were fish hooks planted all over in my contract, right from the get-go. I mean, they had this plan a long time before. So this time I made sure we had good contracts. Guess what? A contract is an invitation to a lawsuit. The contract says this is a demand note. You're supposed to send money when I say so. They say, no. What are you going to do? Well, your choice is to sue them or just say, oh, okay, And it's just the best deal I ever had didn't have a contract. It was Broadway, a handshake deal with Lorne Michaels, who was an honorable man.
Right. Well, the thing is that when Warriors of Plasm came out, and you had to change the name because of a really stupid lawsuit that Marvel Comics was trying to put you out of business. They felt very threatened because you had started one company, you were out, and here you are starting another company, which at that point was cutting into about 5% of their market share, which is huge. Valiant Comics was at that time, and here you are starting another company. So they tried to silence you, neuter you with a very frivolous lawsuit. And then also at that time, the comics industry had been built up by speculators, and it started to deflate a little bit. And I remember when Warriors of Plasm #1 came out, there were several new companies that were popping up that were selling several 100,000 comics. But when Warriors of Plasm #1 came out, it only sold around 150,000 copies, enough for David Lamb.
No, that's not true.
That's not true.
650,000.
What? Oh my goodness. Okay, that's definitely
and
something.
And also, but like you say, the market collapsed. The month that Plasm 1 came out, that the very month was the month where the whole industry fell off the edge of a table. Only a few weeks before, Bill Shanis, I was down at Diamond for something, and Bill Shanis sat with me. He says, I can confidently guarantee you that you're going to sell near 3 million copies of your first issue. And I said, wow, great. 650 is not bad.
No.
But it's not 3 million.
Right.
And so the reason was it took them by surprise too. Of course, the collapse was not only because of speculators. Well, it was speculators. I mean, they did the death of Superman, and they sold in 14 million copies into the stores. The stores couldn't sell them through. They couldn't sell them through. So every store in America had the long boxes full of Death of Superman sitting in the back.
Right.
And all the people who bought it and thought they could, it's a collector's item, I'll use this to put my kids through college. They go back and they can't even sell it for a nickel, and then they dumped it. It's the rebirth of Superman. And so a lot of these people think, it's like the gamblers got to double down. Maybe you make some of your money back. That didn't sell through either.
I remember.
That sold millions and millions of copies. And so, it was all these stores are choking on their inventory. They can't order new comics because they can't pay for the old ones, and so the industry, if you call the peak 100%, it dropped down to around 20% in a very short time.
Yeah, and I remember you were around. You were around 40 at that time when you started Defiant Comics, and so that must have been really hard for you because you created. Two of the properties that came out of Defiant Comics were the real gems were Warriors of Plasm and Dark Dominion, which I mentioned to you prior to the interview were two highly influential comics on me. Warriors of Plasm was so advanced in its world building and its design, and the artwork was so exceptionally phenomenal. It still holds up to this day. Oh my God. It's like masterpiece artwork. And then Dark Dominion, the concept of a character getting over fear, not really having any superpower per se, except for getting over the vibration of fear, which allowed him to access other dimensions.
Yeah, well, part of that was Steve Ditko, because I sat down with Steve. He was going to draw a book for us. I sat down and said, Steve, what kind of character would you like to do? Because it's describe in generalities what sort of character, He says, I don't want anybody who wears a superhero suit. Okay. He said, I don't want at the end of it hit by lightning or a meteor or something like that. He says, I want him to somehow, create himself, make himself superhuman. And I don't mean with chemicals and injections and stuff.
Right.
I mean, just find a way. And feel other things. And I said, oh, okay. So then I went off and I created the Dark Dominion thing. And it had everything in it that he said. And I did that quantum plane thing, quantum shift, where there's a reality that we can't see that's all around us. And that's why Steve left. He came into me. He says he's halfway through the zero issue, the trading card issue, and he puts pages on my desk and he says, "I can't do this." I said, "What?" And he says, "I can't do this." I said, "Steve, why?" He said, "Because I'm Aristotelian, and this is Platonic. I said, what? I said, you're going to have to explain that one, pal. And he said, Aristotle believed what you see is what you get. That's it. Plato believed in the sort of the real world, the world of the mind, where, there's no such thing as a perfect circle, but you can imagine, And he said, I don't want to do that. I said, you can't do this to me, Steve. I said, you can't just walk out in the middle of the story. I said, we've already solicited this. You got to help me out here. So he says, all right, I'll finish this one. I said, good. Meanwhile, he's getting offers. At Valiant, he needed the work. I got him back tomorrow, and after I left, a little while after I left, they just cut him loose. He's a founding father.
I know.
Fool. You don't cut him loose.
That's kind of like Johnny Cash's story in a way.
Yeah, and then he showed up at Valiant, and Steve's fussy. He was fussy. He only wanted to do good guys were all good and bad guys were all bad. He didn't want to do gray area conflicted characters. So we happened to be doing wrestling books. I said, faces, heels, okay. I said, how would you like to do this, Steve? He said, I can do that. Okay. So he did some great stuff for us. And then later he did Magnus for us because I convinced him that Magnus was all good.
Yeah, I did notice that he did work for you during that time.
Yeah, I did quite a bit. And then after I left Valiant, they cut him loose. Idiots. And so, because he was doing good stuff, and he was being inked by Ralph Reese, and it looked great.
I mean,
anyway. Yeah. So anyway, and then he shows up at Defiant. But by that time, he'd started to get some other work. He wasn't like desperate for work anymore. And so when he decided to bail out, he had other offers. So he wasn't working for. He would have. I mean, if he didn't have other stuff to do, but he did. And P.S. he showed up again at Broadway, and then we were talking about things we could do together. I said, Steve, I'd love to publish Mr. A. He said, nobody touches Mr. A.
Which was his creator-owned character.
Yeah, I said, here's the deal. I said, you own everything. You own all rights. You own everything except we get to print it once. Okay? I said, then everything's yours. I said, furthermore, you go find a lawyer, somebody you like, somebody you trust. You find a lawyer, and I'll pay for them. And you have your lawyer make sure that contract is airtight. And I said, so, what do you think? No. So a couple weeks later, it comes in with a completed issue of Mr. A, written and drawn.
Oh, wow.
And he thought you might like to read this. I said, okay, brilliant. Great. He loved Mr. A. He really poured his heart into it. And so we were going to publish that, but then by that time, the company got sold to Golden Books, and Golden Books didn't want to be in the comic book business. They sold us along with a whole bunch of entertainment properties. It was us, Lassie, The Lone Ranger, 1,000 claymation movies, some other movies, a music company.
And this is Broadway that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it was all sold to Golden Books Family Entertainment.
Well, before we went on to Broadway Comics, you were still working at Defiant Comics, but it did close its doors before the big crossover event that was Schism. Some of the artwork has made it out. In fact, one of the covers is currently on eBay right now. But
okay.
Was it hard for you to put so much work again into another company like Defiant? Because again, it seemed like you poured your heart and soul into it, and then to have it end
I did.
within another year or so.
Yeah, it was a year and a half, but the thing is, I was not ready to be writing 6 books a month anymore, and I wanted to. We were much better financed. And I wanted to get other people to write. We got Len Wein. I'll give that mixed reviews. We had Chris Claremont write a book for us a little bit.
Right.
Had a couple other people. And then David Lapham started writing Plasm, and they did it great.
Oh, yeah. He's a genius.
Yeah, he's tremendous. Anyway, I was trying to be more like the editor. I was doing plenty of writing, trust me, but I was trying to just, hire people and train them. And And yeah, I did my best. I did the best I could do. And we had trouble getting artists because at that time, before the big crash, you couldn't, artists weren't available. Everybody was booked. You know, he was struggling to get people, and got some good ones. We got this newfangled kid, J.G. Jones. He turned out pretty good.
Well, it's really interesting that you bring that up, because in my office, I only own one piece of comic book art, original comic book art, and it is Dark Dominion, number 7, page 4, created by J.G. Jones, his first professional work. It's hanging in my office right now.
Cool. Good. He's a great guy. He did great things for us. He was a nice guy. Nice guy.
And so David Lapham recently released the pencils for the completed Warriors of Plasm number 14 without a plot. Do you happen to know where that story was going, the Warriors of Plasm story? Do you have anything that you want to share about Defiant Comics that maybe people don't know or realize about the plots and things like that?
Well, I mean, I was pretty hands-on with all the plots and creation. I did a lot of the creative stuff myself, and then, like I said, try to find writers and artists. And I was trying to teach Janet Jackson to write, and she has written some things, and not so much comics since then, but some short stories and stuff. And she's gotten pretty dangerous. But you know, I mean, we were trying to build a company, and then two things happened. We had a deal with Mattel Toys, guaranteeing us $9 million, okay, for Plasm. And Marvel's lawsuit against us killed that, because we missed our window. What happened was, I knew this guy in the toy biz. His name was Ralph Schaefer, and he worked for a company called TCFC, which stands for Those Characters from Cleveland. And they created a lot of toy characters, and they did licensing too. They created a lot of toy characters, like Holly Hobby, which was based on a children's book, Strawberry Shortcake. They were partners in Care Bears with Bernie Loomis. But I got to know him too. What a guy. Genius in the toy biz. Anyway, so this guy, first of all, he had great people around him. He had toy developers, toy designers, right? And the trouble was that they'd hit some hard times, because TCFC, when it was creating characters like Care Bears and stuff like, and doing lots of licensing, I mean, they would go on these retreats to Aruba and stuff. Just the creative people just go off and think for 2 weeks, and stuff like that, because they were rolling in dough. And then, you know, they started to dry up a little bit. And so Ralph and his business, there were two presidents, co-presidents, and one was the business guy and the other was Ralph. He was a creative guy. And so they decided, hey, why are we creating all this stuff for other people? Let's start a toy company. And so they did start a toy company. It's called Am Toy. And because TCFC was owned by American Greetings, they called it Am Toy. They had one sort of minor hit. It was called Mad Balls. Actually created a Mad Ball.
I remember that.
Yeah, he said, Ralph said, oh, well, we'll have to, you know, get a contract to pay you. And I said, no, it's free. You know, keep it. It's fine. I just threw in a suggestion, and they made the toy. It was called a spitball. It was a mad ball that you put a smaller mad ball in its mouth. You squeeze the big mad ball, and the little ball goes like that. And yeah, well, I'm crazy. Anyway,
it's a great idea.
But I knew Ralph pretty well. And at one time, there was going to be a joint venture between TCFC and Marvel. This is 1980, late 86, early 87. Why? Because we had done some work on their characters, like Strawberry Shortcake and stuff like that, and they liked us. And Ralph met me, he liked me, and he was sharp. He was a genius. But so anyway, they said, hey, let's do something together, because you guys know boys stuff and we do mostly girl stuff. And I said, yeah, okay, we can do that. So we actually had one meeting and didn't nail anything down at all, but just sort of talked in general about what might make a good boys toy and stuff like that. So when I created Plasm, a lot of that general education was in my head, and I deliberately made it what in the toy business is called toyetic. And so, okay, Am Toy failed. The Bad Balls was a small success. They tried a couple other things, nothing worked. And he was in a position where he had to lay people off and stuff. I often wondered, like, when I was desperate for work and eating rice and beans, why I never got a call from Ralph, since he thought highly of me. And the fact is, he was letting go of people he'd worked with for years, and he just couldn't add somebody,
Interesting.
Anyway, all right. So at Marvel, we had this one meeting. We talked in general about stuff, nothing specific. And then one of the things Ralph said is, "Hey, so boys, they like gooey stuff. They like blood and guts and bones and things." Stuck in my head. So anyway, then actually right about then, that's when they fired me, and it's almost like the Paramount deal. They called Ralph and they said, "Look, we've got this new editor-in-chief, Tom DeFalco, and so he'll be taking Jim's place and working with you." And he said, "You don't have anybody I'm interested in working with." And he hung up. How do I know that? He told me. So anyway, all right, here we are. Years later, they started this Am Toy thing. It failed, and but he was still coming to Toy Fair, and so he was going to be in New York City. And as usual, we every year we get together and have a steak over at the Palm too. And so, okay, meet him over there. And this is when I'm just starting Defiant. I don't think we'd published anything. We certainly hadn't published anything. And so he's telling me his tale of woe, about how the toy business had, kind of gone sour a little bit, and then they hadn't come up with a hit. And I said, "Well, I'm starting this new comic book company." And I said, "I got this property." I said, "I'll tell you about it." So I told him about Plasm, and he said, "Well, that sounds great." And I said, "Well, some of it I feel a little guilty because you said things, you taught me, I don't want to be
Yeah, for sure.
stealing your ideas." He said, "It's nothing like what we talked about." He said, "This is totally different." He said, "This is nothing like it. Don't worry about it. Forget it." He said, "This is completely different from anything I ever imagined." And I said, "Well, great." I said, "How would you like to be the licensing agent?" He said, "What?" And I said, "And help us make a toy." He said, "Oh, okay. Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And because I'm throwing him a lifeline,
Sure.
And he said, "Well, that's great. Standard terms?" I said, "No, 50-50. He said, "We do the publishing and all the media, licensing and toy 50-50. And he said, "That's too much." I said, "No, it isn't. It's not enough. But it's best I can do." And so anyway, we sent him stuff, and they were on the phone, faxing stuff back and forth, and he got his toy inventor guys to work on it, coming up with toys to go along with this idea. So finally, we had a meeting. Actually, I took David Lapham. He insisted he had to have his wife along, so we took both of them and had a meeting in Cleveland and talked about the toy. And they showed us some of these little prototypes they made. It was really cool. And so he said, "Well, who are we going to pitch to?" And I said, "Mattel." He said, "Why Mattel?" I said, "Oh, many boys' toys. Hasbro has boys' toys. Kenner has boys' toys. So what does Mattel have? It's Barbie, and He-Man. Big deal." And so he said, "Okay." He said, "All right, well, who should we talk to there?" I said, "Let's call Jill Barat." And he said, "You know Jill?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I know Jill." And I said, "I'm sure you know Jill." And he said, "Yeah, I know her." I said, "I think the call's better coming from you, because he's a toy guy."
Right.
And so he said, "All right." So he called and he set up a meeting, and then he asked me, he says, "Is it okay if we pitch one of ours while we're there?" I said, "Yeah, fine. Okay, sure." So we go there, and Jill has this big boardroom, and she has all of her girls' toy people in there, and Ralph pitches this ballerina toy that they invented. And then she just shuts him down. She says, "Yeah, here's what's wrong with it. Da-da-da-da-da-da. No good. Thanks." So then I pitched Plasm, and she brought in the boys' toys guys, and the girls' toys people went away. She brought in all the boys' toys guys. I mean, all of the boys' toys executives. And I'm pitching this, and I get done pitching Plasm, and she says, "Here's how it's going to work. You get 5 points, and we get 5 points. Each of us is going to have to give up. This is a percentage. Each of us has to give up a point to Margaret. That would be Fox Kids Network, Margaret Lesh. Each of us is going to have to give up a point to Margaret to get it on TV." She said, "We'll take care of all that stuff." She said, "We'll give you $1 million advance and a $3 million guarantee." And she said, I'm prepared to guarantee international will be at least the same, and domestic ancillaries will be about the same. She said, "It always is." And so I said, "Oh, it's $9 million." And she said, "Yeah." She said, "That's just the beginning." She said, "It's going to be much bigger than that." She said, that's anticipating sales of 50 million or so. She said, "It's baloney. It'll be much bigger than that." And I said, "Oh." So she says, "Okay." She says, "Leave your business guy. You and Shaver get the hell out of here." So Shaver and I got the hell out of there.
Right.
And we left his business partner. It was the financial guy who was going to handle the licensing and stuff. And so for a couple of weeks there, we thought we made it. And then all of a sudden I get a call from Terry Stewart. He says, "We're suing you." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, you just launched this trading card thing called Plasm, and we have a character called Plasma." So where? What? Where?
Oh, it was just atrociously bad because it was a Marvel UK property that had absolutely no relation to the Marvel universe and didn't even look like your properties, not even close.
At that point, it wasn't even a property. It was a name registered with intent to use. You can register a trademark with intent to use. They registered the trademark in the UK with intent to use, and they hadn't done the creative work yet.
Oh, my God.
It's a Paul Neary, I think, and other people. They hadn't even begun on it. They were still talking about what it might be. So anyway, he says, "We have to sue you." And I said, "Terry," I said, "You got a Black Knight, DC's got a Black Knight. You got Wonder Man, they got Wonder Woman. You've got Power Man, they've got Power Girl. I said, don't tell me this is too close." And he said, no, sorry, I have to sue you. I said, "This is about, putting me out of business before we can eat a chunkier market share." And he said, "No, it's really just too close, Jim." I said, "All right, fine." And he says, we should get the lawyers together." I said, "All right, fine." So we Dick Winston arranged to get our lawyers to talk to their lawyers. And the lawyers came back and said, "Well, they said it maybe if you added words to the title." I said, "All right, we'll call it Warriors of Plasm." Mattel liked that name better than just Plasm.
Yeah,
Warriors,
it definitely had a more marketable ring to it.
Yeah. So anyway, their lawyers agreed. We drew up the documents, sent them to them, and never heard from them. Weeks pass. And meanwhile, we're working on the launch of Plasm #1, which is going to come out, I think, in August. And so after we didn't hear back from the lawyers, they weren't returning calls and stuff like that, Winston, the smart guy, he comes in and he says, "I know what they're up to." I said, "What?" He said, "They're going to wait till the last minute and file a temporary restraining order and keep us from shipping our book. And if we don't get the revenues from that book, we're dead." Okay, now what are we going to do? I said, "I'm going to call Marie-José Danielle, who's our representative up at the printer, Cable Car." And so I called her. I said, "This is what's going on." And she said, "I'll take care of it." And I said, "How are you going to take care of it?" She said, "You don't need to know that." I said, "Right. No, don't need to know. Fine. Yes. Okay." So anyway, sure enough, the day comes where Plasm 1 is going to ship, okay, from Cable Car, right? It's just about to be loaded on the trucks, right? And Marvel's agents arrive with a temporary restraining order. And to restrain Warriors of Plasm. And Marie-José said, "We will be happy to, stop the shipping of Warriors of Plasm. However, Warriors of Plasm #1 is interlaced on every single pallet that has a Marvel comic book on it. You stop theirs, you stop all of yours."
Ah, you had him there.
Yeah, so when I found that out, I said, God, you're a genius. But she had made sure that plasm was interlaced on all, there are lots and lots of pallets. All of the pallets that had Marvel Comics, and they're all interlaced, you know. And there's no way you could get them all rewrapped.
It would be
and stuff
insane.
like that, get them on a truck.
Right.
So anyway, they withdrew their temporary restraining order and then sued us for temporary injunction. And that case dragged on until, I don't know what, months. And then we missed our window with Mattel because the toy development cycle is a long cycle. And once you miss that window, that's it. You're gone.
Well, when you had to close the doors at Defiant because of the legal fees, which were over $300,000, and then not having the revenue in order to maintain, who did you sell the Defiant properties to? Because I know that you made a deal with the River Group where you retained ownership of some of the characters, but I also know that you sold the Warriors of Plasm and the Plasm concept, I believe, to Golden Books. But who owns properties like Dark Dominion and Charlemagne and things like that?
Well, you're mixing up Broadway and Defiant. I mean, the thing is, when Defiant closed, since the River Group had funded us with this demand note that they refused to follow, a clause in the contract said that in a case of default, if we couldn't pay them, that all intellectual property rights belonged to the River Group. The thing is, Broadway, when we were sold to Golden Books, those properties wound up with Random House for a while. And then I'm not sure whether the properties are owned by Classic Media. They were somehow Classic Media, which was a licensing company run by Eric Ellenbogen.
I believe they got bought out by DreamWorks.
Yeah, okay. Well, so they're DreamWorks properties now. And the Defiant properties belong to the River Group, except I don't know what they did with them. I have no idea.
So to this day, you believe that the River Group retains all the rights to the Defiant comics that you created. But there was a rumor that you were going to incorporate some of the Defiant characters into the Broadway universe, which you founded after Defiant Comics in 1995. Is that correct?
No, that's not true.
Oh, wow.
Okay. We had no rights to those characters. They were gone. I don't know if the River Group disposed of them or what they did. I have no idea. At Broadway, I had a handshake deal with Eric Ellenbogen. See, Lorne Michaels owned Broadway Video Entertainment.
Right.
They owned Broadway Video Entertainment, owned a music company, some movies, Lassie, Lone Ranger, us. And we never had a contract. But I had kind of a handshake with Eric Ellenbogen that I'd always have a retained interest in all the characters. And he went on to Classic Media. He wasn't there anymore. Those properties, when Random House bought them, I don't think they knew that he had a handshake of strings attached,
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, like, could I go after them, whatever? Yeah, if I had all the money in the world, wanted to, could get Eric to admit it and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. P.S. Eric had a circuitous path. He actually was running Marvel for a while, CEO of Marvel.
Well, it seemed really interesting at the time in 1995 that you were able, in an industry downturn, to find new financing again to launch yet another company. How were you able to do that so easily at that time? Well,
one group we talked to when we were raising money for Defiant was Broadway Video.
Oh,
and so they really they didn't, their offer was not good, and so we, nice to meet you, see ya. And then later, when Defiant was going out of business, made sure everybody got paid, and all the little suppliers got paid. I stiffed the printer for $186,000, and I called them. I said we had potential financing coming in from Savoy Pictures, and that deal got ruined by Dan Shedrick and the River Group, and I thought I'd be able to pay you, but I can't. And but we paid all the employees. We didn't have any payroll liabilities. Or
yeah, Cubicore was fine. They're fine. Cubicore's fine.
Yeah. So anyway, I called them up and I said, well, it fell through, and where's this all happening? And so Marie Jose said, she's free for lunch on Thursday or for dinner on Thursday. And I said, sure, So she said, well, we're going to come to New York. We'll take you to dinner. I'll send you a note, tell you where. So he took me to Bice. It was one of the most expensive Italian restaurants in the city. And so I go there, and I'm sitting with Marie Jose and what's his name? Her boss. There's like four of them, right? And we're talking about what happened and this and that, and I'm thinking, oh God, here we go, So then one of them, I can't remember what the guy's name is. He said, look, you brought us millions and millions of dollars worth of business over the years. He said, he said, you're going to be back in business and you'll bring us more. He said, so we look at this as a cost of doing business. He said, it's no big deal. And then not only did they buy me dinner, they gave me a present, a little pocket secretary thing that's like a leather case that holds sort of index card size cards and has my initials on them. And they gave me a present. I'm like, holy cow. Yeah. So anyway, the thing is, it did come true. I have brought them since then millions of dollars worth of business. And do you think I'll ever go anywhere else?
No, I don't think they will. Well, usually people stick with people that bring them excessive benefits like that.
Yeah, they do great work, and they've adapted to the small press runs for the comics and stuff, and they're good people. And so I mean, I will always, in my first call is to Quebecor.
Right.
And,
after Broadway Comics folded, because the industry was already in a downturn at that point, and by the end of '96, it was literally on extreme life support. But another weird twist happened in your career, because in 1999, after Acclaim, the video game company, had purchased Valiant Comics and created Acclaim Comics, they called you back to work on Valiant again, and this time it was a supposedly relaunch, Unity 2000, but only 3 issues were published. Was that strange for you to, after Valiant, Defiant, Broadway, then a few years go by and here's Valiant, that current iteration of Valiant, calling you back?
One correction. Broadway did not fail. Broadway did not go down. What happened was the whole entertainment group, us included, was sold to Golden Books Family Entertainment. So they had a little meet and greet. And I met the CEO, a guy named Dick Snyder, who he used to lobby and campaign to be number 1 in Business Week's worst 10 bosses list every year. Okay, they used to publish an article, the 10 worst bosses in America. And he actually campaigned to be number 1, and is famously kind of a nasty guy. And I mean, for instance, so you worked at San Francisco, right? So his rule was that if on any floor he got onto the elevator, everyone else had to get off. And if you didn't, you're fired.
He was that harsh.
Oh no, he was. Yeah, he did it on purpose. He was trying to be the worst boss in America, and he was, like, every year, And so anyway, so I'm at this meet and greet. There he is, and I walked over and I said, Mr. Snyder, I'm Jim Shooter. I run the comics company. He says, quote, "We don't want to publish comics. We're going to put you out of business, or we're going to close you down. That's it, close you down." And
nice.
I'm like, nice to meet you too. I mean, not even hello. Just we don't want to be in the comic business. We're going to close you down. Like, oh, all right. And then, okay, so all right, here I go. I'm freelance. I'm getting gigs here and there, doing, getting by somehow. And then I get this call, and I'm offered this gig. The editor's name was Mike Martz. Later went to DC. And he calls me up and says, he wants to have lunch with me. So it was me and him, I think his publisher or somebody, I don't know. And what he said he wanted me to do was fix it. He said, okay, it's just chaos. He said, after you, all this stuff didn't make any sense, and it, bad stories and weird stuff. He said, we need you to make the universe right, to do like a Unity type book, call it Unity 2000, and fix it. I said, I can do that. So anyway, pay was pretty good. I thought, all right, fine. So I wrote all the plots. I wrote all 6 plots. I think they're on my blog. I think you can get them on my blog. Or if you can't, I'll send them to you.
No, they're out there. No. The plots are available, and you did script the first 3 or 4 issues, though the first 3 only got published.
I scripted 5, I think. The last one was just a plot. Yeah. Starlin was drawing it, Rubenstein was inking it, and only 3 got published, and then they went out of business. But basically, the whole plan was to kind of do Unity again. Basically, I mean, only this time it was the good guy who was going to create the new universe, not Erica Pierce. And I had all kinds of fun stuff in it, I thought, and
it's a shame that it didn't get finished.
Never got there.
Jim Starlin did release all the artwork, for all the 6 issues. So people have created kind of like a pastiche version of the complete 6 issues. But would you ever, if let's say like somebody created like a Kickstarter project and somehow got the funding together to pay you to script the last part or finish Unity 2000 as a fan project, would you ever do something like that?
Yeah, if I, assuming I have time, and I have a bunch of stuff to do, but I don't have anything, it's hard deadlines right now.
Yeah, it just seems like one of those unfinished things. It's kind of like, the Defiant Comics seemed like if you were a person purchasing it and reading it at the time, it ended so abruptly. It seemed like, oh my God, like your wife died in a car crash or something. And that's kind of how it felt with Unity 2000. It took them 6 months to release the 3rd issue, and then after that, it was just this dangling story.
Yeah, and if you've seen the plots, I mean, what the story is, how it comes out, I think I did 5 issues of script. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look. I don't remember specifically, but I know I've read them several times. But that must have been weird. Like here you are back at Valiant again. Strangely, something that came out of your life, your circumstances, and your mind. And here you are working again. But then they went under. But here's something I really, really want to know, because this is it doesn't. I'm not sure how this happened, but in 2005, after Acclaim went bankrupt, the Acclaim properties, all the Valiant properties, except for the Gold Key properties, went up for auction and sold for around $500,000. Now, as a person that has a really strong history of finding financing, were you aware of this auction? And if so, why didn't you participate personally?
Well, I don't know exactly what I was doing at the time. And the number I was told by the people who bought the stuff was $2 million.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So then they're the people who bought it. Were they lying? I have no way to know if that was an accurate number. But I might have been busy with other stuff.
So you weren't really aware that it was up for auction at that time?
I don't think I was following things too closely right about that. And I honestly, so I bought them. All right. What that would mean is, let's say I could bid $600,000 again. I could probably raise $600,000.
Oh, definitely.
And let's say I did that, and then I'd have the obligation to make some money with them, so I could pay back the $600,000, that I raised. And so I would have to publish, or a miracle would have to happen. I'd have to get a movie deal, or something.
Right.
I did. In other words, it was okay. So you buy it, and then what? It was probably too big a mountain to climb. I don't remember, like I say, specifically what I was doing at the time.
Well, there's like the inside me, the Jim Shooter fan is just like, whoa, please, like somehow going back in time, coaxing you to buy that. I don't know where that is, but here's the thing: is that new owners did purchase it, and they offered you a job back, and for a very brief time, you were again editor-in-chief at Valiant. Was that weird for you on a manifestation level as a person that's like creating your own life? Here you are, time number 3, back at Valiant Comics. Yeah. That must have been really strange for you overall.
Well, it was. I mean, like, I got a call from this guy, I think his name is Jason Katari, and he asked if I'd, have lunch with him as partner in the city. And I went, all right, fine. So I went, and at first they were asking me if I could write a screenplay, do a treatment and a screenplay for the characters that they told me they bought the characters, and would I write a screenplay, I said, I could do that, sure. I mean, I've written 3 or 4 of them, and none made the screen, but that's normal in Hollywood.
Sure.
Anyway, you can do 1,000 until you become William Goldman. You do 1,000, and you hope one lands on the right desk somewhere. But at any rate, so we had a meeting about that. I think we maybe talked a couple more times about it. Nothing ever came of it. I mean, they never actually made an offer, and just initiated it. So then time passes, and there were a couple other meetings where they would talk about publishing and this and that, and I really wasn't interested. So then they went ahead and started a publishing company anyway. But so they nice people, Jason and Dinesh, with one exception. But basically nice people, except for one bad thing they did, which is I'll tell you later.
Sure.
So they hired this guy, Walter Black, and to be the publisher. Walter Black had published novels, just books. I mean, he'd never done any comics or magazines or printed anything in color for that matter, except the cover, he was going to be their publisher. And I'm sure he was good at publishing books, but he didn't know anything about comics. Nice man. And they hired some marketing guy. I think his last name was a funny last name. It was like Toy or something like that. and they had some other, a lady who was sort of everything else, And then they had these offices, temporary offices on 7th Avenue, and, a temporary office-based place. And I think that was all. I'm not sure if they had anybody else. Anyway, all right. So they called me up. They said they wanted to start publishing. So they wanted to hire me as editor-in-chief. And I said, well, I'll listen. So they made me an offer and I turned down. And so I did this like maybe 4 times. I said, look, guys, I'm not really that eager to do this. And anyway, finally they make me an offer. It's dead. And so my terms were, this is just us talking, okay? No contract ever.
Okay.
So just us talking. I said, all right, here's the deal. No writing. I don't write anything. I'm the editor. Hire writers. I'll train the writers. I'll supervise. And if we get big enough, we'll have editors under me that can, do the actual hands-on work. I said, I don't want to, I do not want to be grinding away writing, again. I'm not, not ready for that. Fine. Okay. So I took the job, and it lasted 7 months. And so I had to go to I lived in Jersey at that point. I had to go to the city every day, and fine, took the bus, and walked over from Port Authority to the 7th Avenue. It wasn't that far. And so anyway, so I go there, and I'm in a room with 1, 2, 3, at least 3, and often 4 or 5 people, because they get interns and people there. And I'm in the corner. This is not a big room. And the first thing they say to me is, "Oh, we need you to write a presentation for, And I'm like, I'm not supposed to write, guys. We need a Hollywood presentation for, And every day it's like, well, can you write us a script for EXO? Can you fix these properties? So they had this guy, I think, Gomez, who they hired and paid a ridiculous amount of money to fix all of the characters, like I was going to do with Unity 2000. And it's butchered it. I mean, it was stupid.
Oh God!
And so I'm taking these stories. Some of them are good. I mean, like Quantum and Woody was good, except that since he had essentially no editor, Christopher Priest, used to be Jim Owsley, used to work for me.
Right.
Christopher Priest, he was doing this sketch comedy blackout technique. Great.
Yeah,
Great.
that was prevalent for that.
So the story's all told out of order and stuff like that. And number one thing is he has the first issue where they have these bands, they have to clam together every 24 hours, and they have some kind of cosmic power, right?
Yeah.
Well, as of the second issue, he forgot that they had superpowers. And he has them like climbing a building on a rope, or, they never do anything super for like 6 or 7 issues. Right? In fact, I think finally somebody pointed out to him, aren't these supposed to be super people? Right? So then they have started having them do some super things. Meanwhile, all this history they have is unfolding in these little sketch comedy, blackout comedies, blackout sketch comedy, blocks.
Yeah, the formatting. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the trouble is that it's real hard to keep track of what you're doing. So you have Woody leaving prep school. He's got a jacket with a blazer, and he looks like he's in his at least teens. Leaving Connecticut, and where he had a wealthy life, and then he and his mother, in some subsequent blackout sketch, moved to Harlem, where he is suddenly 5 years old.
What?
He forgot how old he was in the previous segment.
Oh my God.
And so I'm trying to make sense out of this, because there's stuff that he does in Connecticut that you have to be an older kid to do, and there's stuff that he does in Harlem that he has to be like a little kid, So I figured it out. I found a way to do it. And but I mean, that stuff, there's a lot of the stuff he wrote there was great. So it's just a matter of
So you were filtering out all the Acclaim comic books, all the stuff that was getting ready.
I was making it make sense.
Yeah,
I was making it make sense. Ninjak made no sense at all. Ninjak was like a really lame parody of a really bad kung fu movie. But the art was great because Quesada drew it.
Oh yeah, that era. That was the only. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, and then even Bloodshot. I mean, if you read Bloodshot, I mean, it's all these kind of cliche gangsters and
oh yeah, it's terrible.
Stuff. It doesn't make any sense at all. So I made it make sense. I made it good. I made Ninjak good. I came up with. I mean, I'm a research guy. Okay, his name is Ninjak. Why is it Ninjak? Right? What the hell is Ninjak?
Well, it's supposed to be ninja and the Union Jack.
Yeah, right. That makes a lot of sense. But at any rate, the thing is, so I came up with, there are 10 ranks of ninja, and his teacher says, some say 15. I don't know what they're talking about. He says 10 ranks of ninja. Okay. And after he passes his tests and stuff, the teacher invents a new rank for him, the 11th rank, right?
Okay.
K is the 11th letter of the alphabet. Okay, so he doesn't want to write 11.
Yeah, they actually use that. They actually use that storyline in the Valiant Entertainment, as it's called, in the Valiant Entertainment Ninjak.
That's me. That's me.
Yeah,
anyway,
they use that.
But so he signs his name once, Ninja K, and the person who reads it takes it as Ninjak, and then it becomes an in-joke to him.
Oh my God!
Ninjak.
They gave you no credit for that, by the way.
No, I don't. But credit. I'll tell you what. I have done so much stuff that other people's names are on. Other people took credit for. Other people, I don't exist anymore. But I also did EXO. I mean, EXO was reasonable. The way we wrote it the first time, I made it better. I made it much better with how the aliens come to Earth and all that stuff. And it worked a lot better and made a lot more sense. Went into more detail about how he's on the ship and he gets the armor and escapes and stuff, and also thought through the ship. I mean, like they're not going to build a bathroom for this guy. There's like a hole in the floor. I mean, they're not going to. I thought through everything and made it all make sense. And so I was doing that all day, every day. Writing this. I'm like, I'm not supposed to be writing scripts. I wrote a script for Ninjak. I wrote a script for EXO. I wrote some other ones. I think I wrote one for Eternal Warrior.
Oh man,
one for.
It's all stuff that's never. I'm saying, oh man, for people that are listening, because none of this stuff is going to see the light of day, unfortunately.
Well, I can put them on my blog. I guess I don't know. I mean, what are you going to do? Sue me again? That's the punchline. Here's the punchline. I'm going to this office every day. I'm trying to write in a room with 5 people talking.
Well, really quick, Jim, why didn't they let you work from home?
I don't know. They wanted me to be there every day. So, all right, fine. I'm there every day. Now, I know a lot about publishing. I know a lot about the technical business of publishing and the financial business, for that matter. But Walter Black, nice man, knew book publishing, did not know any of this stuff. I'm sitting right there, right? They could ask me. They won't. They had some kind of ego thing. Another thing was that I was kept secret. Not only did they not make any announcement, I had to stay out of sight. And if somebody was coming in to visit, they'd send me to hide in the bathroom.
Oh my God.
And stuff like that, so that nobody could see me. And I said, why? And they said, well, we want to have a big surprise announcement when we, launch. And
well, that's what didn't make sense. Like, it didn't make sense. Like, they wouldn't let you work from home, yet you couldn't be in sight of people. What? Yeah.
And then the other thing is like okay, I'm sitting there, and like I said, I know my stuff. And so they're trying to figure out printing and maybe get it printed in Hong Kong or someplace like that. And the Hong Kong printer, the printers sent them, estimates and things. And so Jason and Walter Black, and I don't think Dinesh was there. Jason and Walter Black are standing, literally, they're about 3 feet from my back, because his desk faced the other way, and it was a small room. So they're standing there, and they're talking about this estimate they got. And Jason's like, he said, well, this says it's for perfected paper. He said, what's perfected paper? Walter Black says, I don't know. So they're talking about what perfected paper might be. And I said, ask me. Yeah, go ahead, ask me. And so finally, I just couldn't stay it anymore. I said, it's the British term for super calendared. And they look at me with their big cow eyes and they say, what's super calendared? And so I explained, have you ever seen a magazine where the paper's kind of shiny, but it's almost got a little orange peel to it and stuff? It's heat pressed to be shiny. It's not coated. That's super calendared. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. I said, I've been here for a while.
That's really interesting. They didn't use you as a proper resource. They were paying you, and they wanted you to do the things that you didn't want to do, and you were contractually,
well, they didn't have a contract. I didn't have a contract. We never had any paper signed.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, it was all just sort of, this is what we'll pay you, and that was it. So anyway, so one day I'm sitting there, and into the room walks Bill Jemis. I'm like, who are you? He says, I'm Bill Jemis. I said, I thought so. I said, what are you doing here? And he's seeing me, of course. And he said, relax, I know about you. I said, okay. What are you doing here? And he said, they hired me as a consultant. I said, oh, good. Okay. So anyway, so into the office comes Dinesh and Jason. Dinesh, I think, spent most of his time out on the coast, but he comes in. Then they come. They, oh, Bill, good to see you. Let's go to the conference room. So off they go to the conference room. And he told me this later. He said, why isn't Jim coming? And they said, oh, well, he's busy, So anyway, the next week, he came in once a week. The next week he comes in, and he tells me, he said, they said you were busy. I said, they want me to write stuff. I said, I didn't sign up here to be a writer. And I didn't have anything to edit. I didn't have any, they were the editors-in-chief, and I was the writing machine.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so when they come in, they go to the conference room. He just says, I want Jim to come along. And but he said, no, I want Jim to come along. So anyway, they bring me along. So now I'm sitting in the conference room with them, and they're asking him some really dumb questions, right? And every time they asked him a question, he'd look at me and say, "What do you think, Jim?" And I'd say what I thought. And then he would scream at the top of his lungs. So he's a foul-mouthed guy. He'd scream at the top of his lungs, obscenities. Just listen to him. Just do what he says.
Oh, my God.
and of course, I got invited to a couple more of those meetings, but they never listened to anything I said, and they never asked me any questions, and then so I'm getting frustrated, so it's going to be about 7 months. I'm getting frustrated. So anyway, I was one day I called Mike Richardson, and I said, "Mike, you have any work for me? Because I'm really tired of what I'm doing." I didn't tell him what I was doing. I said, "I'm really tired of what I'm doing." And he said, "Well, funny you should ask." He said, "Because I have the rights now to do new stories for the Gold Key characters." He said, "You want to do that again?" I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." He said, "It has to be true to the original, but all different. Don't want you doing the same thing." I said, "Okay, I can handle it." And so he says, "Okay." So he said, "Can you fly out here and do this?" I said, "All right, I'm going to give him notice, and I'll be out there next week or something." So I give them notice. I left a letter on my desk and the keys and the computer and everything. And I went out to, actually first he asked me to come to San Diego so I could go on stage and he could make an announcement. And fine. So we did that. Then we went from there to Portland and spent some time in his office and everything. So,
and that was about 2010. But at the end of with VIE, as they're called now, Valiant Entertainment, I mean, you had a falling out with them due to their extreme lack of professionalism, and of course, so many other things. But if you had stayed, where were you going to take that version of Valiant had you stayed in charge?
Well, I mean, I would have done the same thing I always do. I would have fixed all the properties, made them all make sense and better. And then, because even EXO, like I said, I saw ways to make that better. And once I did that, if we were going to publish, I'd try to get the best writers I could. I'd go for Roger Stern and Mark Waid and a few other guys.
They definitely took it in a different direction. And unfortunately, they weren't aware of the fact that the true appeal for old school Valiant fans was the original Valiant characters, the characterizations, the stories. So instead of creating a updated Valiant universe similar to the Marvel Ultimate line, they chose to create something completely different and do the opposite of everything. Whereas like EXO, instead of leading a corporation, Orb Industries, he's now the leader of a country. People were men, they were women. Grandmother had to be grandfather. Everything had to be the opposite of what it was before. And it killed the appeal for me as an old school Valiant fan. It didn't attract me because this wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for an updated version of the pre-Unity Valiant. What I got was this strange iteration with none of the original characterizations.
Yeah, I never read any of that stuff. But the thing is, like, okay, so I give my resignation. I leave all the computer and everything. I mean, I did it the right way. And then I went out and started working for Mike. He was great. He really was good to me. I couldn't get good artists for my books for some reason. The art was generally not very good. But I think it was because he was spending a lot of money on the covers and a lot of money on me. And it wasn't going to get, top shelf guys. So at any rate, it wasn't him. I mean, it was people. So anyway, so I'm working for Mike, and I guess word, was announced at San Diego, and I think, word spreads. So the Valiant guys sue me. Okay? They sue me for stealing their trade secrets and for violating my contract.
Meanwhile, they knew nothing. They knew nothing about it.
Well, number one, what trade secrets do you have, and
exactly.
where did I give them up? And number two, what contract? I didn't have a contract. I didn't have a deal memo. I had nothing. We had sort of a loose verbal agreement. And you violated it. And also. When I left there, they owed me vacation and some pay. They stiffed me, So So anyway, I mean, they sued me for like I say, trade secrets and breach of this contract that didn't exist and stuff. Now, and for running off and working for Dark Horse. Now, if you really thought that I colluded with Dark Horse to run out on some contract, wouldn't you sue Dark Horse? No, they didn't sue Dark Horse.
Yeah, because they actually had like a real legal team with resources to fight back.
Yeah, and Mike has legal lawsuit insurance. He is a limit on how much anything is ever going to cost him. But the thing is, so anyway, and then I'm talking to Mike, and he comes to New York once in a while, and we have breakfast someplace, and I said, what's going on here? And he said, right after they sued you, he said they came to me, and they said that you were evil and terrible, and that if I made a movie deal with them, because of course Mike is in the movie business, that they'd stop suing you. I said, no. And I said, well, Mike, I said, they're trying to manipulate you into this. I said, who was the one you're talking to? He said, Fred Pierce. I said, Fred Pierce. Fred Pierce is a guy that when he worked it for me, and they were the Valiant books were taken off, somebody was counterfeiting them and selling them out of his trunk.
What?
And Fred Pierce, out of the Midwest. Fred Pierce was ex-military, Israeli Secret Service. He had actually once been in the Israeli Secret Service, so he's all into spy stuff. Yeah, and we get tell of this, and Fred says, "I'll take care of this." And so what he does is he gets the local police and the state police there, and they work out a sting, all right? And they pull it off. This guy comes, and he thinks he's selling comics to some dealer for some fabulous price, and it's a sting, and they arrest him. They got him.
Oh, my God.
And so I thought, wow, that's cool. So then when I was trying to start Defiant, and there was, obviously contention between us. Forbes magazine did an article, it was not too flattering to them and stuff. And of course they're worried about me maybe getting into business and stuff. And also they're looking for any way to get their hooks into me, right? These Melanie and Masarsky and
sure.
Their people. Okay. So anyway, I get this call from this guy. His name's Ed Barrow. And he represents this investment group, and he's heard about me and would like to talk with me. I said, all right, sure. So we met at this hotel somewhere in Midtown. I can't remember which one. Meet there. And so he's asked me questions about the business, and he explained that he can't disclose it yet, but that he represents among others, a very large Japanese company would like to make inroads into American comic book publishing, and they think I'm the guy to do it. I said, well, that's nice. And he said, well, do you have a business plan? I said, yes. And it was in my briefcase. And it's nothing that says I can't work on a business plan. See, I wasn't allowed to work for anyone doing anything till my Valiant contract expired. They got rid of me in June, I think end of June.
Uh-huh.
And my contract went to October, so I'm still getting paid. Now, if I violated my fiduciary responsibilities there was another way to attack me to get the stock and so on, because they were trying to get my stock back.
Right.
Which they eventually did through an arbitration, which was another whole nightmare. But at any rate, totally bogus and evil. Forged documents, stuff like that.
Oh, my God.
Oh, and they did take me to court with forged documents once. They lost that case. They were suing me for $50,000. They spent $350,000 suing me to get $50,000. And I spent $70,000 defending my $50,000.
Oh my God.
Why? Because it wasn't about that. They were trying to get a judge to agree that Valiant was in default and all of my stock should be theirs, because they were thinking they were going to sell it for $250 million. So anyway, so back to Dark Horse and Valiant Entertainment. So they're suing me, and they were talking to Mike, and I said, why aren't they suing you? He said, because they want me to do a movie deal, and they don't want to clear the deal, right? So I said, what are you going to do? He says, I don't like being manipulated. And so anyway, he strung him along for a while just to find out as much as he could, and then refused to do a movie deal with them. Meanwhile, now I'm into defending myself to the tune of $11,000 plus the thousands that they owed me, which they just didn't pay me. And so anyway, they withdrew the suit without prejudice. In other words, they could always bring it back. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'd like to see you in court explain about the contract that I didn't have. But at any rate, so I mean, that was the one evil thing they did. But that was Fred. Fred did that because he was thinking, hey, we could sue Jim and use that to lever Mike, you know, in trying to get a movie deal. That was what that was all about.
That must have hurt a little bit because you'd had worked with Fred Pierce, and then here he was coming to stab you in the back. And
yeah, I mean, he really worked for Triumph Capital, okay. You know, and he was their secret agent in Valiant, keeping track of me. He was a pretty good guy when he was there. He like I said, he helped me keep everybody employed. He you know, did the Sting thing to get the counterfeiters. He didn't just sit back and watch. I mean, he actually worked for a living. He started handling the printing, production part of it. And, you know, I thought he was a pretty good guy. And then when the Ed Barrow thing, I found out that this was all bogus. I mean, basically, I was just, you know, thinking about all the stuff he said. And I'm thinking, this guy is trying to get me to say things like, I mean, he asks questions like, what artists from Valiant do you think you could get to come with you? You know?
Huh.
I'm like, well, you know, So they're trying to hang me up on some kind of, you know, trade secrets, you know, the non-compete stuff and fiduciary responsibility. They're just trying to get at me, you know, and because the stock was still kind of a question then. So anyway, I'm thinking about some of the things he's asking me, and I didn't say anything wrong. Because, I mean, if I would have said, hey, I'm going to get Don Perlin, I mean, you know. So anyway, the next time we had another meeting, and so I go to this hotel, but I went way early, okay? And so I'm sitting there on this little sitting area facing the door. And so in comes Ed Barrow, and he walks in for a little bit, and he sees me. And he holds one finger up, like 1 minute, you know, and he goes around the corner to where the men's room is. In like 3 seconds, he's back. He went to turn on his tape recorder. I mean, that's a guess, but it's a damn good guess. So that time, he really got specific with all these questions about, you know, which artists are you going to steal from Valiant, and you know, what kind of, you know, how is your business plan, you know, based on theirs, which I wrote. You know, and I'm like, no, I'd never do that. That would be a violation of my fiduciary responsibility. You know, I mean, I gave the answer that the judge would want. You know,
right? And
so he gets really frustrated, and he finally leaves. Yeah, take that, Pierce. But all right. So anyway, I never did get the money from them, but they send me Christmas cards. So I guess that's right.
So they still send you Christmas cards, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, you know, with Valiant Entertainment, their karma did come back and bite them in the ass, because in 2018, Jason Guattari sold his stake, and Dinesh got bought out, and the company was then owned by DMG. And the new owners are based in China. It's kind of controversial. There's a lot of controversy.
There's a step in between there. There was an ex-Marvel exec whose name escapes me right now. Okay. Odd name. Maybe starts with a U. Anyway, there was an ex-Marvel exec who, when the Dinesh and Jason's relatives got tired of writing big checks to keep them afloat, you know, since they'd already spent it, that's where they got the money, the $2 million, they said, to buy the characters. And so, you know, they're not making any money and they're not doing anything. And so I think that when they, you know, started getting in financial trouble, then this guy, I think it was Peter something. I don't
I can't remember.
Anyway, he comes in. Yeah, he comes in. He's a Marvel guy, and he brought in new money. He's a real executive, and he knew what he was doing. And that's when they got rid of Jason and Dinesh. And he really kind of turned the joint around. They started publishing books, which I've seen, and they looked professional. People have told me they're good. I don't know. He started getting, he cleared up all of the, another thing is when they bought those characters, in the bankruptcy of Acclaim, all of the paperwork had been lost. And just like Harvey, they didn't have a single scrap of paper to say they owned anything. And so they had to, they were going person by person to, like David Lapham, and even the colorist, Maria Macari, and stuff like that, trying to get them to sign documents that said that they owned them. They don't want to pay them anything or share anything with them. They just wanted to kind of con them into doing it. And Maria, it was not, she's not very business savvy, so she signed it. David Lapham wouldn't do it. He said, "No, I'm not signing it."
Smart guy.
Why would I do that? Yeah. And, so I mean, like they had a bunch of problems. This new guy, he was a real executive. He solved the problems. And then he was the one who I think got the Chinese buyers.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Now, how does that make you feel that something you created in 1990, 30 years ago, 31 years ago, is now owned by a company, a percentage of which is owned by the Chinese Communist Party, because all businesses that are based in China do have to give a percentage up to the government. Is that strange for you? That's got to be really surreal.
Yeah, I like I say, I mean, I don't think about it a lot. I just, I'm making a living. I'm just trying to, get along.
Yeah, it's just really interesting. That's just, I try to think about it from a person that's just creating these characters, and especially the Valiant characters, which you created from scratch, and then fast forward to the year 2021, and they're owned by this random company. They have an editor-in-chief, if you can call her that, that's 24 years old. Their comics that they're releasing now, they're releasing like 1, maybe 2 a month, and they're some of the worst comics that have ever been released, in my opinion. They're absolutely atrociously bad. And it's really disappointing. But all the people that you had problems with at Valiant and Valiant Entertainment are gone. So if they offered you a chance to come work for them again with this new Valiant, the DMG Valiant, would you be interested in working for them?
I don't know, probably not. I mean, I've been down in and out and around all that stuff. See, here's the thing. I mean, I remember when I told my mother that, this evil people had stolen Valiant, and my whole family, they helped me when they could. My sister actually colored for us a little bit for free.
Oh, wow.
And also she did a lot of kind of secretarial stuff, not a lot, but I mean, there was mailings we had to do and stuff like that. When we were about to do Unity, I knew how much was at stake with Unity, and so we kept every single letter we got. We got a lot of letters, so I had pulled for me 1,000 letters, 1,000 discrete individuals, right?
Okay.
And I drafted a short, simple letter, and it was the words to the effect that you've written to us before, and we value your opinion, and we're coming out with this new project, and it's the most important thing you've ever done. We'd really like to hear what you think of it, right? So I had 1,000 of these letters made.
Okay.
So what I did was I got a big bunch of Valiant stationery, and I sent it to my mother in Pittsburgh, and all of these addresses, right? And she hand wrote 1,000 letters.
Oh my God. Your own mother did that for you.
Yeah. And she signed it, Eleanor, and said, send response to Department E.
E for Eleanor. Is she still in this dimension? Is she still alive?
She's in home now, and she doesn't have much of a memory. But
okay.
But anyway, so she writes me 1,000 and mails 1,000 letters to all these people. All right. got the greatest response in the history of direct mail. We had 1,000 letters. We had something like, I might be off by 10 here, something like 966 responses out of 1,000 letters. Which means that those 1,000 people all went out and bought all 18 issues of Unity.
Oh, yeah.
By 16, two were free. And read it and gave their opinion. And most of them liked it. Almost all of them.
Well, I think it was the greatest crossover ever in comics because, like I said, of how it was written in the different perspectives.
But just using every dirty trick I could think, not dirty, every honest, dirty trick I could think of, to try to promote this, was so much dependent on it. So much dependent on it. Because I thought if this could be the thing that brings in the money, that enables me to make money, to buy these people out. The only trouble is we were too successful. And there's no way I'm going to raise $250 million to compete against Paramount. Right. So anyway, the fact is we were so successful, we were, hoisting our own petard there. So, well,
it seemed to come at right at a time in the comic industry where people were really focused on artwork and the mega artists of the time. And that's when Image Comics started right at that same time. And yet here was Valiant, while they had incredibly professional artists, they seemed to have the writing. They had the writing and the storytelling down. So you had these two kind of dynamic companies. One was art-based and one was writing-based, it seemed like. Back then, anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we, like I said, all we had to fight with was story. We're using kids right out of the Kubert school. We had the Don Perlin hated Marvel after I left, and we spoke to lunch, and he said, "You got to get me out of here. You got to get me out of here." I said, "I hate this place. It's not fun anymore."
Right.
And I said, "Don, what are you, 60-some? You got benefits, you got retirement, you got all this stuff, and you want to leave there and work for a fragile startup that may not make it?" I said, "Oh yeah, never mind." He said, "I don't care. I want out of there." And I said, "All right," because we could use them.
Yeah, it must have been abysmal at Marvel at that time for him to do that.
Yeah. So he gave up. And I knew him well. I mean, we were friends. So at any rate, he came to work. That was a godsend. Leighton came because no one else wanted him.
Right.
And he'd worked with me at Marvel, and we were sort of friendly. And then Barry Windsor-Smith, same deal. He burned his bridges at DC, burned his bridges at Marvel. He knew me, he knew Leighton. And when I called him up, he came down and talked about it and decided he could work for us.
And he's such a remarkable artist. It's really crazy.
He really is. He's a great storyteller. He's a pain in the ass. I can't believe. But at any rate.
So what are you doing now in the comic book world? Are you still working on comics at all?
Yeah, I do occasional sort of things like Tezosaurus Rex and the things that nobody sees. And like I designed a character for this one company, and I don't know. I did, little jobs like that. And, but in the last couple of years, mostly what I've been doing is I didn't go to conventions for years because I thought, why am I going to go to a convention? It's not like I have stuff to promote or running a company or anything. And then finally, Marvel was doing that anniversary of Secret Wars, and this agent talked me into going to these conventions with Mike Zeck and John Beatty. He said, "It'll be the reunion tour, you'll have fun, you'll make money." And I didn't want to do it. And he convinced me. He said, "It'll be better for Mike and John if you're there. You'll get more business." I said, "All right, okay." So I went to a couple of these, and it was fun. I hadn't seen Mike and John for years, and it was kind of fun, doing it, and they paid me. And the other guys charge for autographs and sketches and stuff. I don't do sketches, or I didn't then. I had recently, but I said I'm not going to charge to sign my name. And
it didn't used to be that way at comic book conventions. It's only a recent thing that people started charging for signatures.
Yeah, and the thing is, all right, like if a dealer is paying or is selling the book and he's basically selling my signature, to get more money on the book, okay, dealer can pay me. That's fine. So I've had some dealer signing stuff in the last few years, and I did a lot of conventions. It was getting to be too many. I mean, my agent is Renee Witterstetter, and she's great, except that, I sometimes find myself, well, not during the pandemic so much, but found myself going to more conventions than I really needed to. And so that was a big part of my income. And then last year, because there were no conventions or very few, a couple miracles happened. I got a couple really good signing gigs for dealers, and then also I got a chance to write a screen treatment, and they paid me. Usually they don't pay for treatments. That's usually you do that on spec. I don't work on spec. So anyway, so I got to write it, and that paid well. And
are you still getting royalties from your previous work at Marvel at all, or DC?
I get reprint payments, the small reprint payments. So last year I got a couple small checks, not enough for them to even send me a 1099. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I mean, I get some once in a while. Whenever they reprint Secret Wars, I get a check. And also some of the other Avengers and things like that.
Well, this kind of segues into the next question. How do you feel about the escalating value of original comic book art? Because it's the last 5 years, it's like tripled, quadrupled the value of original comic book art. For instance, the original cover for Magnus Robot Fighter #5 of Pre-Unity Valiant just sold for $10,000. Some of the pre-Unity pages usually go for around $4,000. I'm hoping that you have a substantial stack somewhere of original comic book art that you've collected over the years, because you deserve it.
No, I have a few pages that people gave to me. I've got Michael Golden gave me the splash page with the first issue of the Nom, which I have printed on my wall. I have a couple pages Don Perlin gave me. No, I don't have any art. I'll tell you what, though, you're right. The value of the stuff is just skyrocketed. I was one of these dealers. Like I say, don't do sketches usually.
Sure.
And so those comic books have the blank covers, and then
the sketch covers.
Yeah. So this dealer, really smart retailer, he brought us to Vegas and actually LA at 2 stores. Mike, John, and me, and he kept bugging me. Why don't you do sketches? I said, I can't. I don't draw that well. I'm sitting next to Mike Zeck, and I'm going to draw. Forget it. And so he says, well, why don't you just, do it? He says, why don't you, here's a blank cover book, draw something on it. I said, how about I mix it really little, so I don't have to know where every muscle is, And he said, that's fine. So I did kind of little silhouette drawings of Batman and Superman, and I don't know what else. He said, it's great. I said, no, we're okay, I guess. So anyway, he's like selling my drawings, and all of a sudden I'm doing all these little drawings, and I'm like, I'm not really good at this, guys. And he said, doesn't matter, it's you. I said, well, okay, fine. So then he comes to us with a blank book, and the book was Secret Wars, right?
Okay.
I think it was. I don't know, it was Spider-Man. Might have been Spider-Man. Anyway, he wanted each of us, Mike, John, and me, to draw just a head and like shoulders of this Spider-Man in the black suit, right?
Okay.
So Mike, he didn't lay it out. What he did was he said, I'll draw here, you draw here, and you draw here, and sort of gave me a general idea what he was going to do. I said, I'll tell you what, you go first, and then I'll, look at what you did and maybe get a clue. So he did, and I said, I'll probably do this, okay. So it's just black, and it's all black, there's the costume. So I did a head, and the way this was a set of 4, and each one just looked like a different thing. One was just heads, one was something else. Anyway, so and then they were numbered 1 through 4. Okay, and so and all 3 of us signed it. Right? So the dealer offers these for $1,000 a book.
Whoa!
That's $4,000, and he sold them in an hour.
Oh my God! Did that just flabbergast you? Was that just like, oh my God?
I couldn't believe it. So it ended up being a good gig. I mean, like I got some money for that, and then and Mike and John were very happy.
Yeah.
I told the guy, I said, look, I said, I don't know what your deal is with these guys. I said, but whatever you pay them, pay me like a third, because that's they're artists, He said, half, and that's my final, or 2/3, and that's my final offer. And I said, all right, fine. So anyway, I mean, that kept me alive, and the screen treatment thing kept me alive, and the CGC signing that was good, and so I made it through the year. This year we got a couple of shows so far, but I got plenty of writing work to do. I've been writing. Eric Stevenson wants me to write a how-to book. Nobody knows that, but they can know it. It's okay.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I've been puttering around with that, and I got a couple other.
Well, have you ever thought of doing creator-owned work, or because Warriors of Plasm still is so popular in comic circles, people still talk about Warriors of Plasm and Dark Dominion. Have you ever thought about maybe, I know this sounds kind of silly, but licensing those characters so you can do them again, like in a smaller scale?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like a lot of work, raising money or Kickstartering or something. I don't know. I have work in front of me. I've got 3 or 4 projects because I've had several different publishers actually, basically say, you got a character, anything you want, work or not work for our creator on. And I said, okay. So I could. There's stuff I can be doing,
right?
And meanwhile, I've been doing some work that doesn't pay. I've been working on the company that pays me. I'm not
sure.
My partner owns Illustrated Media.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. And is that J.J. Jackson that you're partnered with there?
No. The guy's name is Joseph Loria.
Oh, okay.
He's a great guy. He's a lawyer, so is his wife. She's one of the biggest litigators in the country. And so, he came to me a long time ago. I don't know where he got my name. But his brother was a Navy SEAL. And he always liked comics. So he retired as a Navy SEAL. So he's an older guy. Okay, retired. And then he wanted to do a comic book about being a Navy SEAL. And so his brother, my partner, Joe, financed that. And sort of got his feet wet in the comic book business. This book's called Spec War, and it's really not bad. It's pretty good. I mean, for a guy whose training was Navy SEAL, he seems to know comics very well. So anyway, I kind of got his interest. And there was a time many years ago where the State Department hired this lady, I think her name was Charlotte Beers. She's an advertising type person, advertising marketing person. And what they were trying to do was they were trying to get filmmakers and book publishers and people to do sort of, let's call it Voice of America stuff, have a more positive message about America and things like that. And the film industry turned their back. Screw you. And they couldn't get any cooperation from anybody. So my, just to do some stuff that maybe would only be distributed overseas, things like that. Nope. And that they would pay for, by the way. And so my partner, he sent a letter. I think he actually sent it to Charlotte Beer, and he got a call from the White House. I guess this is when Bush was president, from Karl Rove, And he said that someone for the State Department, the person one step down from Charlotte, was this lady named Peggy England, and that she wanted to meet with Joe in New York to discuss this because they were fascinated by the idea. And so his brother, that stuff wasn't right. You cannot show that to anybody. And he commissioned, I think Armin Gill, and who wrote it? Somebody wrote, maybe his brother wrote it, to do like the beginning of a comic book, first so many pages, right?
Okay.
And he was going to go show these to Peggy England, say this is what they have in mind. And they started getting cold feet about going in there, not knowing a whole lot about the comic book business. And I think he got in touch with me somehow. I don't remember how. And he said, asked if I'd meet with him. And I said, sure, okay. And he told me, and he said, just like you to come with me to this meeting. And that's really all the farther we got that first time. So, okay, we're going to go to the meeting. And I meet him somewhere in the city. And he says, look, this is what I'm going to show her. And he shows me these pages, I think drawn by Armin Gill. And so I'm looking at these. And I said, don't take these out of your briefcase. I said, don't let anybody see these. I said, it's awful. I mean, the art's okay, but it was like, imagine the dumbest person on earth trying to write a comic book to convince, Muslim terrorists not to blow us up.
Oh my God.
It was just bizarre. It was, and he wanted to call the company, Reflections of America. So it's like a character who's supposedly Muslim, and he's telling everybody, "Oh no, it's really great." I said, "This is bad, Joe. Don't leave this in the briefcase." And so we go to this meeting, and this Peggy England really interested in the concept about, and she says, "We have an enormous amount of money." She said, "We'll put you in business. You'll create it, you'll publish it. We'll take care of the distribution overseas. We'll take care of marketing there, And I said, well, that sounds amazing, And she says, what do you have in mind, And Joe says, well, here's, and he pulls the thing out of his briefcase, and as he's pulling it out and putting it on the table, I said to Peggy England, I said, excuse me, Peggy, I want you to know I had nothing at all to do with this, and I don't like it. And Joe looks at me like, stabbing him in the heart, And so he passes it over to her, and she's flipping through the pages. She pushes it back to him and says, that would sink your ship. That would sink your ship. And she turns to me and says, what do you have in mind? And I said, create all new characters. And I said, different, very different. I said, every one of them features Arab, Muslim characters. That's the stars. I said, maybe one very cartoony for the young kids, maybe one that's, sort of like Star Trek in the sense that it's on a spaceship, but the Arabs run the spaceship. I mean, it's all Muslim characters, right? Right. I'm just winging this off the top of my head. And I said, entertainment first. Just brilliant entertainment. I said, and then good art. And I said, and then very subtly between the lines, you might lay some
kind of like subtle thinking,
hints of tolerance and stuff like that.
Right.
And so she said, I like that. She said, write it down. So I did. And I had a number of conversations with the Middle East expert at the State Department. I can't remember the guy's name right now. But I call him or he'd call me, and when we go over, he never looked at anything I did. What he did was he would coach me about culture and what they liked and what they saw. And I have a friend who was Egyptian, so I sent his family in Egypt shopping, and they sent me 2 shopping bags full of, Arab and Muslim kids publications.
Oh, interesting.
Even videotapes and stuff. Yeah. So I was like loaded for bear, and I came up with 5 properties, and they were all pretty good. And we were ready to have we had sort of the skeleton of a business plan. ready to have a meeting, and then the Gulf War breaks out, and then nobody answers the phone anymore. I told you, I lead the league. I lead the league in near misses, man.
So what happened? Why weren't they answering why weren't they?
Because they were all busy dealing with the war. They were all busy, on other stuff.
Oh, my God.
And then because she wasn't getting any traction anywhere, Charlotte Beer quits, and they closed that program, and that was the end of that. But,
man, it just seems like you've been so close so many times around.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I lead the league in Pyrrhic victories and near misses.
but people still recognize you as a legend, as a person that contributed your entire life to the comic book field, and so much good came out of the work that you've done.
P.S. The thing is, Joe realized that I was right, and we have tremendous respect for each other, and we kind of stayed together and worked on projects ever since. He helped me with Dark Horse, for instance, and also did some work for somebody else that he was involved with, and it gets me these mostly little jobs, and so anyway, I do that with Joe. I've been doing that kind of stuff, and recently working on the website, which is not paying gig, but it's work that has to be done. And I've got a couple projects lined up, and I've got Social Security.
Oh, good.
Okay.
You are the same age as my dad, so it's good to know that you're taken care of, as you deserve to be, for all the service that you've done.
But then there are no royalties. It's just little reprint payments. There's no, all the work I did for all those companies, I was an employee when I did it. That's the definition of work for hire. That's the definition of work for hire. So, but now, since I don't work for Marvel, DC, or any of those people, and I'm not doing a licensed book like I was at Dark Horse, or else I would have owned a piece of it. The fact is that, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to own it.
Right, at this point,
And we'll see. Because then it's nice that I'm not up against the wall, that I can pick and choose a little.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing because, you have a hardcore fan base. There are hundreds of thousands of people that around the world, that think you're an incredibly exceptional writer. And like I said, you had a massive influence on my personal development as a young kid, reading Dark Dominion, reading Solar, and trying to wrap my head around the heady concepts. It really helped me evolve, which is such a cool thing. And you helped so many people understand these things around the world. It's such a huge contributions you made.
Oh, thank you. I learned from the greatest guys out there are. I paid attention to every word they said.
It's hard not to. But Jim, this is the longest podcast that we've ever had. I'm so honored that we had this time together. I want to talk to you a little bit more now that we've gone through your incredibly vast professional career. If you still have time, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the creative process, but if not, we can reschedule it. But yeah, let's go into that a little bit then. So, okay, you're a spiritual guy, you're a metaphysical guy, you're super intelligent, you understand these concepts of manifestation and how to pull something from nothing, make something from nothing. When you're dipping in, when you're writing, does it feel like you're in another world? When you were writing Marvel Comics, did it seem like you were in the Marvel universe or the Valiant Comics? Were you in that universe, channeling the information and then writing it out? Did it feel that way for you?
Well, first of all, Marvel and DC, I inherited what they did, their style, and I inherited the Marvel universe, and I observed, I respected my elders, and tried to do it the Marvel way or the DC way. Now, that said, I really also felt like, no, Stan had it right. You have to feel it. You have to, make these characters real. I mean, I just think like, if I can make somebody understand, how this feels, like Stan did for me so many times. Stan Jack, blah, blah, blah. But so I always try to knock it up a notch, and try to do a better like at DC, I was kind of stuck with a lot of stuff from, Legion of Superheroes, stuff like that. But I made the best of it. I tried to make the characters as real as I could. I borrowed my high school friends' personalities,
Right.
because and I thought I was doing something wrong, and then I found out that all writers do that.
But did it feel like the characters were real for you? Like when you were writing it, did you feel like you were real people and you were scripting what was going on inside their mind?
I think if you do it right, you really role play it. You don't have to actually dance around the living room with a yardstick or something, but you have to make it make sense. You have to make it. That person would do that. The way Mark Twain says it is that you should draw your characters so well that the reader will know what they would do in a quote given emergency. He's right. He's Mark Twain, but that is exactly what you do. You have to because I'll read a lot of these books, and I did some reviews on my blog, and I just like doesn't make any sense at all. And a person does this one day and that the next. They have this power one day, they don't the next day, and a different power or something. It's like I was reading Wonder Woman, and then there's a scene like where the god Hermes is injured. He gets shot with an arrow. Don't know if it's a mystic arrow or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
But he survives it, pulls the arrow out, and he's okay. He's all bloody, and he hurts, but he's not dead. There's a couple things like that, and yet it's like the gods are invulnerable when the writer wanted them to be. And yet somebody gets stabbed with a broken glass who's a god, and it cuts her hand.
Yeah. There's no consistency.
Well, make up your mind.
Right.
And the Amazons are kind of attacked by this god Eris, Strife, and she doesn't actually do anything. She makes them kill each other. And so they come. Wonder Woman brings them out of this trance, and they find all their mothers and sisters lying dead on the ground in front of them. And nobody takes a shot at Eris or anything like that. That's she's a god. What can we do? And and she's kind of hanging out with him. She's like was hanging out with Wonder Woman and stuff. My Wonder Woman kicks her ass. If you can cut her hand with a broken glass, don't tell me she can't be hurt because she's a god. That wasn't a mystic broken glass. That was a restaurant broken glass. So and was the arrow mystic? I don't know. But the point is, you're not even paying attention to your own logic here, And this character, Wonder Woman, she's, Carol Strickland said that's not a Wonder Woman. That's even not even. It's like the Xena warrior princess, except not as good. Makes no sense.
Well, I've been thinking, Jim, that I'm trying to wrap my head around, because when I look at the older comics of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s, they have a different feel. They feel like prints, like an art print. They feel like true art. And then something happened in the mid-90s into the 2000s where comics seem to lose their special feel. And I tried to wrap my head around it to try to really think of what that could be and why that is. And the reason that I personally came down to was the computer coloring. The computer coloring changed the way my brain processed comics, and it wasn't as appealing. And nowadays, comic book art looks like animation cells on each panel. It doesn't even really look like a comic book anymore. Do you think that that's part of the reason it's had a huge downturn?
Well, I think it is to some extent. I think that it's nice that you can do all these tricks with a computer, and it's nice that you can you can paint and stuff. But I think that a lot of these colorists, especially, they don't do the trick because it's good or it helps the story or it works. They do it because they can, and so you get stuff that's And then also, I mean, nobody taught these people anything apparently, because I mean, I learned to color when Mort Weisinger was teaching me everything. I got sat down with Tajana Wood and told how to color, and and all this stuff that's the knowledge of the ancients. It's just been lost, and it applies to today, even with the computer. I don't care what the tool is; the principles are the same. For instance, like in the old days when you had about 56 usable colors. And the lousy paper and all that. All right, fine. They really went simple. The principles are the same, but they went simple. Did you notice ever that almost all heroes are red, blue, and yellow, and almost all villains are green and purple?
Right. That's because you had a limited color spectrum back then.
Well, and also they wanted the heroes to be the primaries, villains to be orange, purple, green, and in those days the civilian characters were Prussian blue, tertiary colors, and browns and things like that. Okay, so you had that. The other thing is the primary colors pop. You see them clearly, and the characters and even the villains to some extent pop. And so what happens is those characters are usually close to the camera, so you have instant depth, pastel background, red superhero. Here's the villain in the middle ground, and he's got a green and orange, and so they had it simplified, dumbed down. But that was because of the technology. That was because the paper sucked, and you only had 56 colors. You had 3 levels of 3 colors plus 1 level of black.
Right.
And then several of them, this ink saturation was too much. You couldn't use solid red, solid blue, solid yellow, or just bleed through the paper. So, on top of each other. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
So anyway, all right. So a lot of these guys never learned to think that way. They never learned, hey, depth is the key to clarity. Make depth. Don't just sit down and start coloring and say, well, that's a shoe, so I'm going to color it brown, and that's a parking meter, so I'm going to color it gray, and you color it piece by piece, and then you come up with a jumble. What you should sit down and you analyze the picture, organize it, say, how am I going to make that look close and that look far? How am I going to make the middle ground look like it's in the middle? And so I actually took colorists to the Metropolitan Museum and showed them the Dutch masters.
Oh, wow.
And said, there's 10 miles of depth in this picture. The way you do it is you create planes. You separate the planes. Here's the dark stuff in the foreground. Here's the lit stuff in the middle ground. Here's some more dark stuff. Here's it's not quite as dark. Here's some light stuff, and then there's the mountains in the distance, and they almost fade into the sky.
Yeah, it seems like that has been lost. A lot of the new artists.
Absolutely. I used to show them, and I used to same with inkers. I tell them, think depth. It's not a Rorschach test. I don't care about whoever told you to spot blacks. I'm going to kill them with my shoe. Because that's spotting blacks. That's nonsense. What's that mean? It means nothing. It means Rorschach test. It was what it means. So I would tell them. I said also, I'd give people Dinotopia. Colorists. Dinotopia. Look at Dinotopia. Okay? Every picture, the guy creates depth. He's a painter. You're a colorist. You've got a computer now. You can color like he does if you want, but make depth. I told Dan Green, great talent, tremendous talent. He was inking the X-Men. Excellent artist. Total control of the tools, understood technique, all this stuff like that. And the stuff was flat as hell. It was just no depth because he was spotting blacks because he'd always been told to do that. I guess he thought that was some peculiarity of the comic business. And every time I tried to explain depth to him, he'd blink his big cow eyes at me and think, oh, here's another idiot editor telling me, stuff that doesn't make sense. So finally, one day, he comes in with some paintings he did. Show us his paintings. And look at these paintings, miles of depth, right? Just like the Dutch masters, same logic, separate planes, and progressions of values. Other tools too, progressions of contrast, progressions of intensity, color. There's all kinds of ways. Use them all. So I'm looking at his paintings, and these things have miles of depth. And I said, Dan, you see what you did in this painting? See the depth? He said, yeah. I said, do that with your ink. He said, oh, is that what you mean? I said, yeah, that's what I mean. And he said, "Oh, okay." And so he did, just like that, overnight, because of 10% or 100% better. And I mean, he was good to begin with, So anyway, the thing is, like, a lot of guys, and even back then, were losing it. But at least they had guys like Larry Hama, Archie Goodwin, and Louise, me, and other people telling them stuff. I don't think anybody's teaching these days.
No, they really aren't. I think they're mimicking the new artists of the 2020s are mimicking the artists that they grew up with of the 90s and the 2000s. And those artists didn't have the same training, or maybe half of the training. And so they don't have any of the training. So the comics look flat now. They don't have dynamics. They don't have presence.
When somebody does a night scene, okay, they say, "Oh, it's night. Everything has to be dark." And so it's mud. And I tell people, how Terminator 2 has a lot of scenes at night, T2? Yeah. Ever have any trouble seeing anything? No. Unless that's the story. Unless the story is that you can't make out the figure in the shadows, then it's fine. It's part of the story. But I mean, like, and that Klaus Janson was great. I mean, one time I did a Daredevil, and people just forgot Daredevil was blind. I said, I got to fix that. No, I mean, the writers would write him as if he could see, and Gil Kane would draw him as if he could see, like, have eye movements, like a sighted person and stuff. And which some black people do if they got blind later in life.
Sure.
Like, but anyway, the thing is, so I had all these guys attack Daredevil in this big room. What's the first thing he does? He kills the lights. He breaks the lights. So now it's dark. He can see, sort of, radar sense. They can't. And so there's like 3 or 4 pages of this battle in the dark. And Klaus, just showing off, he did every technique you can do to show that it's dark, but you can still see what's going on. Like he did, shades of blue. He did muted color. He did, I mean, no question, this is in a dark room, but perfectly clear, So there are guys who do know what they're doing. Like,
well, yeah, he understood storytelling, but I mean, at this point, Klaus Janson, he's considered old school. He was around in the 80s, and I don't know if he did work in the 70s, but.
Yeah, well, he started around when I did it.
Yeah, so he's considered a legend now, and it's the new guys that really need the education. Maybe it is important for you to write that book, outlining all.
Yeah,
well,
that's what Eric says. He says he's got to get this stuff down before he die or something. So okay,
yeah, I think it's really important as well.
It's on the blog. But a lot of it's on the blog. But yeah, I'm working on it. I don't have a deadline. And I don't, I'm not killing myself these days.
I mean, do you think part of the reason that I think that comics didn't take off as a kind of like an art form in the same way as movies and music is because people didn't understand, not the people consuming it, but most of the people creating it didn't understand that comic books are the combination or the marriage of art and literature. And we value art as humans. We value art. Think of the master artists and the masterpieces worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And we definitely value writing. Think of the great writers. We value poetry. But yet you combine those things into a comic book and somehow it's perceived as a lesser art form.
Well, there's a lot of reasons of that. But the thing is you're exactly right. This is a new language. We invented a new language. It's a verbal, visual language, and it's more than just the words, and it's more than just the pictures. And the way that you use that language, the way you use that language to tell a story, requires you to speak the language. and so, a lot of guys don't. They don't. They're drawing pictures. They're just pictures that they want to draw, and the writer will figure it out. And sometimes the writer can't. I remember Frank Miller. I mean, the moment he got it, he started out as a young guy, 19 years old, something like that, and he didn't know. I mean, he like a lot of young artists who were looking at the art rather than caring about the story. So a lot of his favorite artists were guys who did this shattered window pane panels and. It was about, it wasn't about the story at all. It was about, page design stuff like that. And so when he started working for us, I told him the first job he did, I said, I have to see your layouts because your samples are all this weird panels and stuff. I said, so you have to show me layouts. So he showed me layouts, and I guess he was talking to Neil Adams, and he was telling him that the editor at Marvel, I don't think he used my name because Neil would know better. The editor at Marvel told him, how he wanted the thing done. It was his first job. And Neil said, ignore editors. They don't know anything. He says, just do it your way, and they'll look at it and say, oh, yeah, that's great, And so he brings this thing in, and the layouts, it's nothing like the layouts I approved. Look at this. It was a 5-page job. And I said, you didn't do what I asked you to do. He said, well, Neil told me. I'm like, Neil, is he signing your check or am I? And he's like, well, but he was giving me advice, and I said, Frank, I'll pay you for this, but we don't have anything for you, to go back to Vermont. And he said, give me another chance.
Oh, wow.
You could tell he had talent, but, he just, got misguided by Neil. And, Neil, look, not this and Neil. A lot of 98% of the editors who tell you what they want don't know what they want, So because he worked with art directors a lot of time, and they didn't know. They just said stupid stuff, and then he'd do it right, and then it was fine. So it was kind of channeling that when I was talking to Frank. But at any rate, so then Frank started doing it. I made him do the grid. I made him do Kirby style. Not style. I mean Kirby
like
type
the layout.
Storytelling.
Yeah,
Kirby type storytelling, like use the grid, use the marks on the paper, and kind of thinking about the story. And he every time he'd bring a job in before he took it to the editor, he'd bring it to me and show me. And so I'd go through it and I'd say, Frank, you got 2 guys talking in this panel. I said, in the next panel now there's a 3rd guy. So was he here all along? Did he hear what he said? He goes, And so there were all little things like that, And I kept preaching. Storytelling. Tell the story. Like think about it. Think you're communicating. Don't think rules. But guys have trouble getting over the thing that they think you're telling them rules. And so one day, Frank did a job, and it was really good. And I looked through it, and I guess he remembered all the rules or something. But the rules he made for himself. I kept telling him, no rules. There's no rules. You can do anything. You just have to know how to do it, and I'll tell you how. And so he brings a job in, and I looked through it. I said, nice job. He said, what do you mean, nice job? I said, it's good. He said, it is? I said, yeah. Oh. He starts thinking about it, like all the stuff I said. Next day he comes in, he says, I got it. He said, we're telling stories. We know the stories. They don't know the stories, and we're telling them the story. And that doesn't sound too bright, but I knew what he meant.
That was a watershed moment for him. He finally got it.
Oh, yeah. What he meant was, you see the story. When you think of a story, you see it as a little movie in your mind, okay? You don't think of still pictures. You don't think of skipping from one still picture to the other. So when you're in the comic book business, your job is to make the audience see the same movie that you're seeing.
I hope all the comic creators that are listening to this, future and current and past, are taking note of this, because I actually live near a professional comic book artist. He's not really working right now, but he did, and I tried to give him some of your pointers that I've learned over the years, and it seemed like it was Greek to him. Just like a complete story in each issue, like, character always should be in costume if they're in costume on the cover. Just some of the rules that you had laid out over the years. I tried to coach him on that, and it seemed alien.
Yeah, well, I think that, like I said, nobody's teaching stuff, and the thing is, you have to understand there are no rules. I mean, you can do anything, but I mean, can you do a trick shot? Can you have a lot of these guys, they want to, tilt the camera, like turning a steering, you go up, down, sideways, all around. That's okay, but they want to do what they call a Dutch tilt in film, which is a picture like turning your film camera like a steering wheel. So now it's like at a 45-degree angle. Okay, and so that would changes the horizon. It makes the horizon tilted. Okay, it's called a Dutch tilt.
Okay.
And a lot of guys want to do that because they think it makes it look more exciting. And in fact, DC Comics used to insist that you do that. They had a page done by some artist. I can't remember his name. Spanish last name. And they used to show this to people as a perfect page. Because the horizons are all tilted. There's one close-up. There's one long shot. There's one, you know. And I thought, no. The perfect page is the perfect page to tell the story that's on that page. And if it takes all panels that are just the same, then fine.
Right.
That's what it takes.
It's exclusive to the story and the moment and the feel of the story. You can't just put templates
tell the story first. And so anyway, you know, it's like there's nothing you can. I mean, I remember there's a shot where you know, Kirby has Captain America. He breaks into this store that sells sporting goods. He's really not Captain America. He's a bad guy.
Okay.
And he's being pursued by a Human Torch. And there's a guy there with the mop and bucket mopping up. I remember it's a sporting goods store. And so Captain America picks up like a archery bow, and he takes the wet mop and he uses it like an arrow. And when Torch comes in, he fires the mop at him, and the Torch is flame as weak at this point. It puts it out. So to do that, Kirby, he wanted to do that looking down the barrel kind of shot as he's firing the arrow, right? You know, looking down the gun barrel.
Yeah, that perspective, shot, yes.
Looking at the target down the gun barrel. And, okay, now, if he had just shown him running into the store and then shown that looking down the, you know, the arrow shot towards the Torch, nobody would have known what's going on. Everybody going, what? Huh? You know, what's this? So he had to do the setup shot. He shows the archery kit on the floor. He shows Captain America with the wet mop and the bow. So now we know who it is, who's doing this, you know. And he shows him like drawing the bow, I guess.
Okay.
And then he does the dramatic looking down the barrel shot. No one has any trouble understanding it. So he set it up, and then you can do anything.
Right, as long as there's like some visual context, you can do the crazy stylized panels with the...
Anything, yeah. You want to make a slanty panel, fine. You want to... I mean, Kirby did panels where the Torch was way up in the air, where he would do like an airplane banking feeling by tilting the horizon. Get that. It's not that you can't do it, but go to the movies. Spielberg never does it. Cameron never did it. Lucas doesn't do it. Almost no director does it, unless there's a damn good reason. And like the airplane banking, or another thing is somebody wakes up in a funny position and the world is kind of, you know,
upside down,
sideways to them. Yeah, that or whatever. And you're so kind of looking through their eyes, and you're seeing things at an angle or whatever. That's fine. I mean, there's nothing you cannot do. But most of these guys, it's almost like the computer guys. It's like they do stuff because they can. They're not thinking like, how is this going to help my story or hurt it? If you want to, I'll send you a couple of short things I wrote about this. Wrote them
please feel free. I mean, really, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's a friend of mine I went to high school with. She got in touch with me because, well, you know, she knew me from high school. And she has a granddaughter who's interested in comics. And asked if I could, you know, help her. So I sent her some books, not comic books, books about drawing and stuff. And I also wrote a couple short pieces to explain stuff to her. And I think it helped her a lot. I didn't want to keep it short. Didn't want to make it oppressive. You know.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you. You can see.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. And really, anything that you feel like the Valiant fan community or the Defiant fan community or the Broadway fan community might think was interesting, feel free to email me. Old plots or anything that you feel like should get out to the people that love it. I mean, I'm happy to do that for you.
Yeah, I did, by the way. I just glanced at the computer here, and I did script 5 issues of that.
You did do the 5
issues of script and 1 issue of plot. So that means it's Starland. So I guess we did this Marvel style.
I thought it was interesting that Jim Starlin actually just went ahead and penciled in the whole series before you even had finished it, just based on the plots.
Yeah, well, I gave him the plots. I mean, he made him wait a couple times for plots and he was yelling at me, but we're friends. But the thing is, yeah, I got all 6 plots to him, and I assume he got paid for drawing 6 books.
I don't think he did.
I got paid for 5 scripts, and I don't think they were paying me separately for the plots. So,
well, I'll tell you this, John.
But I was just looking at it. I did the 5th script, and then there was the 6th plot, and it's too bad.
Okay, well, I'm looking at my copy of the downloaded Unity 2000 plot and artwork, and I see a page-by-page plot of number 5, but the actual character scripting, I don't think you released. If you want to send me that, let's get that out there, because
yeah, I'll send it to you. Yeah, sure, I'll send it. Yeah, it's no problem. It was I keep it in a little folder. So
yeah, and really anything, because people want.
Well, we'll see what comes up. I mean, I have so much stuff.
There's such a rabid fan base for your Valiant stuff and your Defiant stuff that people just really attached to that. Because I remember that you wrote a letter to retailers around 1991 in which you talked about how Valiant wasn't like this independent company. It was actually a new major. And you included with that letter like a print of the cover of Shadow Man #1 at the time. Yeah. And it seemed like that it really was a new major, and that's why so many people are still attached to it. Even myself, I'm totally guilty. I'm a huge Valiant fan. So
well, the thing is you were saying, like, why, what happened, why didn't this take off like other media and stuff like that? And the answer is there's several answers. One that we've just been talking about, which is that the creators, you can pick up any novel, you can pick up, you watch any TV show, you can see any movie, and you don't have any trouble understanding it. You can follow it, Right. But there are comic books you can pick up and stare at all day. You have no idea what's going on. Okay, and the story starts in the middle and ends in the middle, and it's not done in a way that you would do a continued story. There are ways. So that's one, is the lack of craft, and lack of teaching of the craft. Another one is greed, because when I was at Marvel, when I took that job, the president of the company, I reported only to the president. Stan had no role in the comics except that he was Stan, and I'd ask him his opinion all the time. But when I took that job, the president said, "You're here to preside over the death of Marvel Comics. Try not to lose too much money." Oh. I said, "You're so wrong." I said, what are you talking about? He said he was going to get us out of comics, which he saw as a total loser, and get us into children's books and animation. And I was just supposed to not lose too much money until he got that done.
So the greed was another component.
Right. I said, look, you're so wrong. We're going to be bigger than Disney. I said, we're a long way from there, but we can start. And he said, I don't care what you do. Do anything you want. Just, self-liquidating, doesn't lose a lot, makes money. Go ahead. So that's why I had a free hand. Now, the thing is, we were on our way. We turned it around. Sales were crashing. We turned it around. And we helped the direct market grow, and he helped us grow. And it was getting bigger and bigger. And if these greedy assholes hadn't kind of pulled the plug on us and said, let's cash out now. It's probably just a fad. Let's get out while the getting is good. So they got greedy and ended up getting, driving me away and look where it is now. Like you said, some comics sell 10,000 copies. Okay.
Oh, it's atrociously bad. I mean, it's depressing if you think about the height of the comic book industry, and then you think about where we're at now. It's really sad. Same with
Valiant. I mean, we struggled for a year and a half, and then finally we're getting traction. Things are selling. Now we have money. We can get better artists. We can get writers. We can hire Mark Waid or Roger Stern. Actually, Roger did work for me. But at any rate, I mean, like, we were on the edge of taking off and maybe making it back into a mass market business again. And upgrading the whole creative quality and making it happen. And greedy people said, sell it now. So I mean, like, there's the greed thing, there's the lack of craft and lack of teaching of craft, and then The other thing is that we have always thought of ourselves as small time, and I don't think that. I think that this is there's such power in this medium. It's an eyes only medium, real personal, direct relationship with what you're taking in. Okay, take it at your own pace. Only visual medium, you take it at your own pace, unless you count stereoscopes or something. Right. Take it at your own pace. It's not being fed to you. You take it at your own pace. Eyes only, total focus. Superman's voice never sounds wrong. The cape always blows the right way. Every image can be iconic. You know, if you do a movie, sooner or later, Superman's going to sit down and have his butt sticking out and look funny. Right. But you know, in the comics, like you look at Frank Miller stuff, every panel tells you exactly what he wants you to know, and he does it with iconic power, and that's because he got it. You know, and so few guys do. You know, there's a lot of guys who are pretty good, but not enough Millers, and certainly not enough good ones.
But you know, there are people still in love with comics. There are even kids that love comics, even though like we've talked about, the market has dwindled so much. But I was lucky enough to participate in the How to Create Comics seminar in 1994 with you in Florida. I was very lucky to do that. And also, at least as a kid, it seemed mind-blowing. I was like, I couldn't believe it. And and then I wanted to be a comic book writer, sent out scripts. I did get a rejection letter from Defiant that I kept for many years, but unfortunately that got lost. But if you were to give current writers, somebody that was interested in becoming a comic book writer now, outside of all the advice that we've talked about over the last 3 or almost 4 hours, what would you tell them specifically to help them stay focused and stay motivated and do their best work?
Well, the first thing is learn your craft. Everybody can write an English sentence, thinks they can write. No. That's like saying you could be a dentist because you have teeth. You have to learn your craft. It's not just, you know, I mean, there's a lot of guys, very good guys. Neil Gaiman, for instance. Neil Gaiman is an instinctive player. He can do it. He does it well. He's very good, you know, but he can't explain to you anything. He cannot possibly tell you how he does it, because he does it kind of by feel. All right. I have a couple of things that he wrote, which I occasionally use in my writing lecture. One of them is, people ask me how to write. This is how you do it. You sit down and you put one word behind the other until you're done. Well, gee, thanks, Neil. That helps a lot. You know, and he says a lot of stuff like that.
That's a very British thing to say, to be honest.
Yeah, come on, Neil. You know, and I actually went to one of his writing classes once. I thought, well, let's see what he has to say. He's good. Went there, and basically the only thing that he said was useful in the whole thing, which I don't know how you don't already know this, but he said at the end of each page, you should have something that makes them turn the page. Okay. And you know, other than that, basically the whole lecture was write like me. I never tell anybody write like me. But that's because he can't explain what he does. He's so do it this way. Stan was an instinctive player because he knew what was right, he knew what was wrong, and he would tell you, do it like this. Everything. You know, he wouldn't just say, write like me. He'd say, do it like this. And you'd understand, especially because I had training from Mort and I did a lot of studying on my own. I would say, oh, this is what he means. You know, and I'd you know, fill in the missing logic. I mean, because nobody can say Stan didn't know what he's doing. I learned so much from him.
Right.
But he wasn't the best. He wasn't an analyst like Archie Goodwin. Archie Goodwin could tell you he could do it. He could tell you what he was doing, why he was doing, and how to do it in vivid detail. I mean, there was nothing accidental happened on that paper when Archie was ready.
So the craft is so important for these new guys.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to, you know, like learn your craft, avoid, you know, greedy jerks, and have some self-esteem. This doesn't have to be small. We can be bigger than this.
Yeah, I mean, I bet it's pretty, speaking of Disney, is it weird for you that being in the industry for so long and having contacts with all these different companies that now Disney owns Marvel, they own Star Wars and Lucasfilm, they own,
The
I believe
Muppets.
they bought Classic Media as well. Yeah,
I think so.
the Muppet. Right. Yeah, is that mind blowing for you now? Like it's all under this one wing.
When I was talking to Golden, I said we can be bigger than Disney, and he said, "Oh, baloney, it could never happen." And I didn't anticipate that Disney would buy Marvel, but for $3.3 billion,
I know, it's mind blowing.
And it's like when we were, back then, I don't know what the thing was worth, not much. Even when I went to buy it, it went for $82.5 million.
Right.
And but I tried to buy it another time too when it was in bankruptcy. But even in bankruptcy, it was worth billions, probably 1 point something.
So wait, let me touch on that a little bit. I don't think I've ever heard that before. You tried to buy Marvel during their bankruptcy at the end of the 90s?
Yeah, what happened was they were going bankrupt, and I had been told by Dick Snyder that they're going to close Broadway, and I actually got a call from Bill Bevins. And Bill Bevins was the CEO of the company that owned Marvel, which was owned by Perlman.
Okay.
So he after hello, he says, "Can you fix this?" And I said, "Yeah, I can fix it." And he said, "Come up to my office." I said, "All right." So I drove uptown. It's just off Madison Avenue, I think. And I didn't drive. I took a cab up there and went to see him. And we talked about it, and just general conversation about me, what I would do. And he said, "All right, I'm going to need a couple weeks to work this out." And he said, "No, I'll be in touch." But within a week, they went bankrupt. Other near miss. Yeah. So anyway, so now it's bankrupt, and also I get paid, I think, for a couple extra months, like severance or something. But then I'm looking for a gig.
So there was another chance that you could have had Marvel. Man, there's so many alternate realities. You're a person that always talks about the multiverse in your comics and alternate realities. There's an alternate reality where you bought Marvel in the 80s. There's an alternate reality where you bought Marvel in the 90s. There's an alternate reality where you stayed with Valiant, were able to buy it, and it's a huge comic book publisher. We're just not in that reality.
Yeah, well, the second try was in bankruptcy, and I knew that nobody was going to put up 1 point something billion for a guy with a high school education. So I got a couple of ex-Cap Cities ABC executives, each of whom had run billion-dollar units of Cap Cities ABC.
Okay.
And I made a deal with them. I said, "You guys handle the media, I'll do everything else." And they said, "Done." So we're going to be partners. And I had a great investment banking company, McFarland and Dewey, and they were helping me. And we had a meeting with Perry Capital, which specializes in these distressed sale bankruptcy things. They were going to be the equity partner, probably have to put up some hundreds of millions of dollars. That was no problem for them. And they asked me, well, who can we get as a debt partner? I said, well, we could call Chase. And he said, well, who do you know at Chase? I said, Tom Reifenheiser. And he said, you don't know Reifenheiser? I said, yes. Okay, let's try it. He was the head of media and entertainment for Chase Bank. And so called him up on the speakerphone, get his secretary. Says, Jim Shooter, I'd like to speak with Tom. She says, oh, yes, right away. And sure enough, he gets on the phone. What can I do for you? And I said, this is what I got going. Explain Cap Cities, Perry, whole thing, and Marvel in bankruptcy. And he said, we didn't even talk about it. He said, you can count on our support.
Oh, wow.
So we went and we researched it. I mean, they had a document room set up, I think it was in Jersey City, at their lawyer's office. And so we went there and went through their documents and stuff, found out a lot of interesting information. But we also found out that there was a just giant stack of contingent liabilities because Marvel was suing Toy Biz was suing Marvel, and they each owned each other's stock, and there was a nightmare. And so one of the guys says you'd have to buy them both. And then the other guy says to me, he says, can you run a toy company? I said, no, I know a lot about toys, but no, I don't think I can write a toy company. And they said, what are you going to do? I said, let's get a toy company partner. And I called Jill Barad at Mattel. I said, this is where I got going, because you need boy size,
Right.
And she said, I'll send my business affairs VP. And he did, and he came. And he looked at the documents, and he said, why don't we just let it collapse and pick up the pieces? And I said, because it's not going to collapse. They're both in bankruptcy. The trustee's going to merge them and give them Chapter 7 until something good happens. And that's exactly what happened. And the good thing that happened was the movie started, and they started making money. So, I tried twice,
Yeah.
Strike two.
Yeah, well, like I said, there's an alternate reality where, you're there. We're just not in it. But man, Jim, this has been an incredible odyssey. 4 hours of really in-depth questions, so many incredible stories. I'm so honored and grateful to share this with you.
I hope you edit this down to something reasonable.
Yeah, 25 minutes. Yeah, it's...
That's good.
No, this all has to be released. This is every second of it was very valuable information.
Well, listen, if you ever want to talk again, I don't mind. It's fun. So
yeah, I don't want these stories to be lost. I mean, I'm sure you have another 30 years or so of life left, but you do have a treasure trove of stories in your mind.
Yeah, it's been how many years now? Let's see, 69. So, 56 years. I've been doing this.
That's well. Thank you so much for everything, Jim. Hold on the line through the outro music, and we're going to talk a little bit more. Everybody, you just witnessed our longest podcast with one of my personal heroes. I'm so honored and excited. This has been a great moment for me. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Midnight on Earth.